The resurrection of a damned soul. The torment of a troubled past. Born of the same blood. Two brothers. Now the story must be told.
No way. See that garbage can full of salt? That's where he keeps his victims. The salt turns the bodies into mummies.
Wow.
Yeah! Look out!
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
I'm a fan of classic movies.
Hello and welcome to Overlapping Dialogue, a podcast of audio commentaries dedicated to discussing cinema that fascinates us in a way we hope fascinates you. We're your co-hosts, Kyle and Levi Huffman. I'm Kyle.
I'm Levi.
And already, and I know I've said versions of this several times in the beginning of these podcasts, it's hard to believe we're already where we are, that we're recording our 20th episode.
Yep.
And for some of you, it may be our very first, and if it is, welcome, welcome. We know this movie has a huge fan base behind it, so I wouldn't doubt if this actually ends up being some people's very first episode. Yeah. But our audio commentary today is of 1999's The Mummy. And I said this at the end of the last podcast, that this was one of the first movies we thought of when we were thought about movies to record and talk about, because, you know, of course, we talk about some movies we don't really like, but we find it interesting, but we also talk about a lot of movies that are very dear and close to our heart. Yeah. And very few really hold and occupy that space in the same way I know for us as The Mummy. Yeah. This 1999 version. So, Levi, why don't you run us through some of the key cast crew details of The Mummy?
Well, it's a 1999 American film written and directed by Stephen Sommers. Of course, it's a remake of the 1932 film of the same name. But basically, it's about, I'll read here, it just says, the film follows the adventure of Rick O'Connell as he travels to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead, with a librarian and her older brother, or not older, just older brother.
Well, either way.
I wanted to make sure we knew he was older for some reason. I thought that was important in my mind. I don't know why. Or they accidentally awakened Imhotep, a cursed high priest from the reign of the pharaoh Seti I of 1290 BC. I guess we've already talked about the original film a little bit when we did our Invisible Man episode, the 1933 film. But I guess we can kind of relitigate that.
Well, again. That's one of our least listened to podcasts. So, it'd be a good chance to kind of go some of that stuff.
As we know,
obviously, you're a huge, I should just say this, huge Universal well, I know you might bristle at this, I guess. You know a lot about the Universal monster
movies. Yeah, I'm not as
movies
much of a fan as I used to be, but there's a lot of useless information. Well, I don't think it's useless information, but there's a lot of information I walk around with.
But for a long time, that original Mummy was one of your very favorites. Yeah. Just real quickly, what about that one do you think is distinct or unique within the Universal monster canon?
Well,
as that goes?
What's interesting about it, to me, obviously you had Dracula was kind of the first of those. Once again, we've talked about a lot of this stuff in that episode, so I won't go too much in depth in it, and you can go back and listen to that, which I highly recommend. But that one, Dracula was originally made. It was going to be silent originally, and then they started filming it as sound, a talkie. But it still retained these silences, and it works in that way. We're going to talk about later when we do a certain thing about the Philip Glass version that you can watch. I've never seen, but we'll talk more about that later, about a specific thing we're going to find. That one was obviously a little more silent in that way and more moody in that way. Frankenstein was kind of similar, but I feel like that was made obviously at the outset of being a sound film, so it was more had a little bit more going on as far as that does. What's interesting though about The Mummy is, first of all, it's the first to have a sustained score throughout, even though it still had portions of silence. But that also, I think, unlike those other two movies even, it has this dreamlike kind of wistful quality to it that the other two don't even have. I feel like Dracula kind of has that a little bit, but it's not as pronounced. Frankenstein doesn't as much. I feel like that's just a tad more action-oriented, and kind of has some set pieces in it that those other two movies don't have. But that with The Mummy, I think that it's both its strength and its weakness that it is like that, because it's very slow. It's very, even though, like I said, it has a little bit more music and has some more things going on. Randomly, the first impalement ever on screen is in that movie.
Really?
During the flashback sequence where they kill all the guards that buried him, and there's that shot where they throw a spear and kill a guy. It's actually pretty gruesome for 1932, but anyway, so there's some things in there that are new and different, but ultimately it's a pretty quiet. I wouldn't even use the word contemplative necessarily, but just a very kind of low key movie that has some scares, but he's barely in the bandages. He's just more of that kind of general.
No, yeah, one of the striking images of the movie is Karloff in the makeup, but not necessarily with all those
and
bandages.
the fez on and not.
Another key differences between the 32 Mummy and those other Universal movies that came before or after is that that's really about the only one in that franchise, or the franchise itself does, but this kind of set in the Middle East are really not of the kind of European tradition of ghosts and goblins of Europe, but it's like another part of the world. So, and obviously that opens up some challenges as well in terms of depicting and representing people.
And I've talked about I've talked about all the inherent racism of a lot of those movies in that podcast, and also I wrote extensively about each of these movies on Letterboxd when I went through them. When was that? 2019, summer 2019. So if you want even more thoughts on all of that stuff, go look all that up. But specifically, that it's interesting, that a lot of those movies are based in Europe, but then that one, of course, is in Egypt. But then even the sequels of the Mummy sequels and a lot of those movies in the 40s actually came to America, and it was kind of this whole, nationalist idea of we are being invaded by these, either people from Europe or people from the Middle East. So it was very, of course, very nationalist and then xenophobic.
To jump ahead a little bit, I'm guessing the Mummy played a role in the Hammer movies as well.
Yes, and I actually haven't. I feel stupid to say this. I still have not seen that first Mummy movie with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and then there was I think one or two sequels to those, but they didn't make as many of those as they made with Dracula and Frankenstein. But yeah, I'm sad to say I still haven't seen that one because the Hammer movies are very interesting. I'm not that in love with. I haven't actually seen as many as I would like to because they're kind of hard to get a hold of.
Here in America, I guess.
Yeah, but they're not that hard, but like you can't buy them all in a set. They're kind of spread out over all these different distribution companies, and anyway, it's a long story, but I still haven't seen that one, and I feel stupid that I haven't done that even before this podcast, but I very much want to. But and we can kind of talk more about that stuff in the remakes in general. But of course, the reason I say all that is that this movie is incredibly different in about every way, other than the fact that it's still the same basic story of. And
you got Imhotep,
that Imhotep had been in love with the pharaoh's daughter, and that he was killed mummified alive as a result of his actions, and that there was this kind of curse involved where if he were to be reawakened, he would put all the plagues of Egypt over. In this movie, at least, that wasn't really the case in the original one. In the original one, it was just the basic kind of King Tut's curse type thing, because that was very much in vogue in the 20s and 30s when that stuff had happened, when they found King Tutankhamun's tomb, and that a lot of people died under all these mysterious circumstances. A lot of people think there was a curse because they opened the boxes and stuff. And it's kind of the same thing happened in that original film where it's about that. But ultimately, both of these versions, but especially that original film, is ultimately the 1932 version, is a love story about, love across the ages. It kind of calls it, of this sense of a man who pined for this woman, and that he's wanting to use the body of this woman in the 20s to resurrect his dead lover. And that's basically the same story in both. But this, obviously, is totally an action film, and is way more involved with these other characters, and is a lot more global in a sense of that it has the British characters, but it also has some Middle Eastern characters and some American characters. So most of the characters in that original film are just British people, and there's a couple, like the villain is Egyptian, and there's a couple Egyptians here and there, but mostly it's just British people in that movie.
I feel like in a lot of ways, too, that Mummy movie, at the time it was being made, while it's playing on certain archetypes, either of horror cinema at that time, or of, like, just like what we know about ancient Egypt and like the curses and the kind of these Orientalist ideas to an extent. That it's doing the hard work and digging the ditches and kind of making the new template through which things will be judged. By the time we get to this movie, it's kind of following a very tight template that's already been established of just action adventure storytelling. And so as a result, this movie, The Mummy 99, just feels like, going back to some things we talked about in past weeks, like a theme park attraction or like a ride. It just feels so propulsive. It feels so well put together. We'll talk about maybe some critical responses to this that I was frankly a little bit shocked and disappointed by. But this just feels like it's so refined, and it's as opposed to that 32 version, very different type of movie, but it feels like it's doing the hard work to try to make a new type of movie at the same time, too.
Because that's another thing is about this movie, and I think this is the case for a lot of people. I hesitate to say this because it would make it sound like I'm some expert on Egypt or anything, but this movie made me fall in love with ancient Egypt. That's one of the most interesting things to me. I actually don't know as much about it as I would like. And of course that goes beyond just the mummies and stuff like, the civilization of ancient Egypt and what that means in history. But this was the first thing I saw of that, and it immediately put me under a spell of, this whole, I guess, it's weird to call it an aesthetic because it's a culture and a civilization. And also it's important to note that not only this movie, but also a lot of other movies, of course, have these stereotypes about Egypt that history has proven to not be totally true, or that we're not as sure about. But I think that's the case for a lot of people with this movie, especially for me, is that it made me very much interested in that. And that I think it kind of, like, like you were kind of saying, you said kind of about that 32 movie, that it kind of sort of introduced this new type of movie. And it probably wasn't even the first Mummy movie. I don't know. There was probably some silent movie somewhere.
I'm sure there was.
That was the first major version of that. And that we've seen versions of that throughout time, even up until the newest Mummy remake, and also even like, X-Men Apocalypse being a version of that. Yeah. But it seems to me like this was a resurrection, pun intended, of that type of movie, The Mummy 1999, because really that hadn't been being made for a pretty long time.
Well, at least in my memory of the 90s, I don't really remember a lot. This was my first real introduction to that whole concept of the mummy as a horror archetypal figure. I think I'd seen Monster Squad, which that came out in the late 80s, and the mummy version in that is kind of an afterthought to some of the other monsters.
Yeah, and there was that I'm going to look this up really as quick as I can. There is this one Bram Stoker short story or kind of book that was about a mummy that was made into a movie, I think, in the 80s, and I'm going to look and see what that... Jewel of the Seven Stars was the name of the book, and it was adapted into... It was adapted a couple times. The Awakening is what I was thinking of, which was in 1980, and then also The Tomb in 1986.
Okay. Well, it says even in 98 there was
and then even, just before that, there was a film called Bram Stoker's Legend of the Mummy, or simply Bram Stoker's The Mummy. And then, of course, that's what I was going to say, is one of the last types of these things, it was a Hammer movie, Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, which I've never seen, but was an adaptation of that book. So that book has seen actually quite a few adaptations.
Okay.
So there have been versions of that. But I think it's been really probably since Blood from the Mummy's Tomb that it was, or even maybe The Awakening in 80, but that we've seen a big mummy movie. It had been a little while before that, and we haven't really seen a ton of them after. I mean, we've seen like The Mummy Returns and The Scorpion King, and those Scorpion King movies.
And the whole franchise now,
right? And the Tomb of the Chinese Emperor, which you haven't seen, right?
No.
I saw that in theaters.
Dragon Emperor.
I mean, or what did I say?
Chinese Emperor.
Yeah, the Dragon Emperor is what I meant. Yeah, it was the Chinese.
Yeah, I was going to get to the sequels of these movies later. We're going to talk about.
That, of course, was most memorable for "Here we go again" moment in the trailer. But I mean, and I think they recast Rachel Weisz for that movie too, so it's kind of like whatever. But yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what I was meaning to get at, is that this is really an introduction for a lot of people to the whole mummy.
Well, especially for the certain generation
right?
of us who were growing up in the 90s and 2000s,
which in its own way, we kind of talked about the Pirates movies in this way. It's a version of the Raiders of the Lost Ark in a way for a lot of people. And it's certainly not as good as that, or Pirates, but it's still really good. But anyway, so that's what the movie's about. We'll go through the cast. Brendan Fraser as Rick O'Connell, an American adventurer who served in the French Foreign Legion. And of course, he had been at the beginning of the movie, he's at the Battle of Hamunaptra, and he's kind of aware that there's something there, there's some kind of curse on the area or something going on, and that he's basically approached by Rachel Weisz's character and her brother, who are looking for Hamunaptra to find... they're wanting to find the Book of the Dead that's there, but there's other people who are also wanting to go there because there's a bunch of treasure there too. And he's kind of their guide who knows he's been there, and it's kind of a city where a lot of people go and they die, but he actually was able to get out. So, what do we have to say about Brendan Fraser? I mean, I feel like there's a lot to say.
There's a lot to say. I'm not sure how long this is going to take. Yeah. There's a really brilliant GQ profile that was written of him a few years ago called "Whatever Happened to Brendan Fraser" that I'm going to put a link into this podcast. Brendan Fraser, for us, our generation, who again were raised from the 90s and 2000s, it seemed like he was everywhere for a while. He was ubiquitous. He was a pretty big male movie star for a brief time period in the 90s. And this, you can look at some of his 90s work.
Dogfight was his first
which
film.
He told a story about working on. I remember in that, having his ribs hurt.
Right.
Basically,
and then, of course, Encino Man was kind of his big breakout.
Yeah, School Ties, which I've seen, and that movie has like a lot of young actors who were getting ready to blow up.
Yeah, Matt Damon, Chris O'Donnell, Ben Affleck.
So that's a decent little movie. It's not as good as some of the talent would lead you to believe it is.
Yeah. Airheads, I've kind of heard.
Yeah, I've seen clips of that on TV. I've not seen the whole thing.
Oh, that's that movie. Yeah, it's like that rock star movie thing.
Hijack a radio station to get airplay for their song, I think. Basically.
Okay, I didn't know that's what that was about.
And Steve Buscemi, I think, is in that too.
Let's see, Brain Candy.
Brain Candy, I've heard of that. It's some Canadian comedy.
Okay. Oh, it's a Kids in the Hall thing.
Okay. George of the Jungle was. Yeah. Have you ever seen that?
I think I have, but it's been so long ago.
He's finding that, and I think that movie weirdly comes to typify or create the archetype of who Brendan Fraser is that he's an attractive but kind of goofy looking guy who's willing to be the guy who gets slammed into a tree, gets slammed
right.
into things, and just like I think that kind of weirdly become so attached to him.
One thing that's important to note, I always forget this, he was in that film Gods and Monsters, which was that biopic about James Whale with Ian McKellen. It's interesting, that was only a year before The Mummy, so that he was that's just kind of weird to think about, that he was in some Universal adjacent horror adjacent thing about him, and then
and then of course The Mummy's in '99.
Just before that, Blast from the Past, which is kind of another,
and again, that's a good example of that. Encino Man, George the Jungle. A lot of these roles, he's playing this guy who's almost like out of sorts from a seemingly another time period, or he's like this special case of like not idiot, but just
this
like
kind of
innocent, naive like presence.
Right.
The Mummy's very different in that way, that he's this kind of world-weary traveler.
Right.
And what I love about him in this, and we'll talk about this as it goes through, is that at first he's presented as a lot more of a tough guy, cool guy than I think the movie actually reveals him to be. That he's a guy who's kind of manic and kind of freaking out at some points, and
screaming, and
and I mean, you see that with like Indiana Jones, and like so that's not totally new to this, but like I think that I like that over the course of the movie, he's revealed to not be exactly the tough, cool,
and he has plans that don't work, and he's like Indiana Jones. He has to improvise. I mean, he very much is an Indiana Jones type character,
clone.
But he breathes life into it in his own way, of his Brendan Fraser way, that is a little different.
Dudley Do-Right always remembers a movie that I just saw a poster for in movie theaters in the late '90s, and I never did see it, but I just remember seeing that poster over and over again.
Monkey Bone. We've seen some of that on TV. Oh, Henry Selick made that, and Sam Hamm wrote it. I didn't know that. Yeah. The Mummy Returns, of course. He was in a Quiet American adaptation.
Which is an adaptation of...
I didn't know that. The Graham Greene.
Novel,
Looney Tunes Back in Action, of course, I think...
that's an interesting role, that he's like playing a stuntman for Brendan Fraser. And he tells a very kind of almost sad story in
that GQ
article that... this was at a time where he was feeling a lot of contempt for himself, and he plays the stuntman for Brendan Fraser in the movie, but then he plays briefly Brendan Fraser in the movie towards the end, and he punched Brendan Fraser. And the version of Brendan Fraser he brings to it of himself is very interesting, that he's very kind of Hollywood, like very out of touch, very... hoity-toity, very just like doesn't care about his stuntman or care about anyone else, and so I think he was trying to bring out some of the worst versions of himself in that, or what he perceived of himself. But Looney Tunes Back in Action,
and his father in that, of course, is Timothy Dalton, who come to Las Vegas, one of the all-time moments. But
you got any thoughts on Looney Tunes Back in Action?
I think it's, and a lot of people say this, it's of course way better than Space Jam. We saw that new Space Jam trailer, by the way. Still awful.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, that's a Joe Dante movie, so he understands the Looney Tunes way more than whoever the heck directed Space Jam.
Yeah. I know Joe Dante, he despised Space Jam and kind of made this movie as a response of sorts.
Also, Steve Martin, very good in that as the villain. Very weird performance. Crash.
Now, you've seen Crash more recently than I. He does have a very famous line reading, though, in Crash.
I mean,
it says it all.
Yeah.
Well, now, what do you think of him in Crash and then the movie itself, I guess? You've seen it a little more recently.
Yeah, I just saw Crash for the first time last year, and it's a very infamous, controversial movie. It's a movie that, frankly, I think is so fascinating, and... I don't want to say it's not complicated, because it definitely is, and I wouldn't even want to use the word inoffensive, because there are things about it that are complicated and maybe racist, and there's some particular things. But I didn't find it to be as bad as people act like it is. It's also because I never saw it years ago. I didn't live in the moment where it won Best Picture. I haven't really been able to participate in a conversation about it, but I found it to be both incredibly interesting and then incredibly puerile. I mean, to me, it's the typical 2.5-star movie. It's very much like, there are things in here I like, there's things that I don't like, but as complicated as it is, I get what Paul Haggis was going for, and I understand the movie he wanted to make, and I think it's very interesting and kind of important that somebody made a movie like that at that time and did the whole hyperlink thing. But it's also a moment where the hyperlink was kind of becoming...
Oh, yeah, didn't we? I guess we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I think I did already talk about this
Syriana.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But it's kind of just an incredibly forgettable movie, too, and it hasn't really stuck with me. Well,
now, and it's interesting,
particularly though, I will say that Matt Dillon's performance in that movie, I think, is the best thing about, because he's Matt Dillon. Yeah. And I think is the most interesting thing in the movie, and kind of what you should hang the whole movie on, is that performance, and him and Thandie Newton in that movie, I think, is pretty interesting. But Brendan Fraser's actually not in that movie an awful lot.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting that by this point he's moving into a little bit more of a character actor part.
Right. Because then there's a bunch of movies here: Journey to the End of the Night, some independent movie, The Last Time, The Air I Breathe, and then he was in Journey to the Center of the Earth in 2008. I forgot that was even a movie, but yeah.
And then anyway, well, I was just going to say it's interesting that he's starting to transition into some more character roles, because you're seeing he's in a few action adventure stuff coming up, but it's starting to dry up a little bit by this point for that, and he's getting a little older, obviously, too.
Right.
So.
And yeah, there's a bunch of movies here, just random stuff.
A lot of stuff that we just not really heard of. Yeah.
And a lot I would actually looks kind of interesting. Some of these independent movies, at least.
Yeah.
But he's been kind of recently, in what that GQ kind of article is about, he's been in a lot of TV shows. He's most recently in Doom Patrol.
That's
which
probably the biggest thing that's reintroduced people to him.
But he was in that show Trust in 2018.
But you've been watching some of it.
I just started it because I was like, I kind of want to watch some of that. I'll watch some this week before this episode, because I was like, I want to see him in that some. And it's a good enough show. It's about the John Paul Getty, the oil tycoon, and his grandson's kidnapping in Rome, and I don't really know how it all turns out. I know he lived and everything, but Donald Sutherland is Getty in that. But Fraser is playing his like kind of bagman fixer type who like is going in search of him, and there's the whole second episode of that show is him going to Rome to kind of look for him, and he like wears a cowboy hat and he talks to the camera at different points, and it's very much like a Cowboy in Hamburg type thing, like in The American Friend, except it's totally different performance, or The Counselor. Yes.
Yeah. This is a weirdly specific archetype.
It's a thing that all kind of came out of The American Friend, obviously. But he has some really funny line readings in that. He's very like, "Aw, shucks," like, "Well, that ain't the way we do it down in Texas," kind of thing. But there's there's a lot of funny stuff. But there's one scene where this he's clean out of patience.
That's the only sentence in the Italian phrase book that I can make out. Son, look at me. I'm slow to wrath. As a good book says, anger resteth in the bosom of fools. But I'm about clean out of patience. So I want you to take this half of the pencil, and I want you to write down everywhere that you and your friend Paul went in the last 2 weeks. I need names, addresses, times, sexual orientation, cup size, dick size. I don't care if you pissed in a pot. I want to know the name of the pot. And I'm going to just hang on to this half of the pencil, just in case. Get up. Walk with me.
And he is, going after that guy like, I need to know what's going on. And what was he? He's like, cup size, dish size, all that. Yeah, it's funny, but and he's I think he is really good in that. It's interesting to, and they said in the GQ thing, it's really cool to see him back. And now, of course, something that needs to be brought up, and you can read more about it in the GQ article, those of you who want to know, but part of his kind of disappearance is all supposedly about this sexual assault that happened to him at a Hollywood Foreign Press Association luncheon in 2003 by Philip Burke, who I don't know if he was the president of it at the time.
I think at the time he was.
And that he's kind of been at these different times, and he talks about it there, and that it seems like that negatively affected his career, and he didn't want to talk about it, But then when all this Me Too stuff kind of happened, that
he felt a sense of shame and weird guilt. And one positive aspect, of course, of many and of sorts of these Me Too movement that's come out is that, of course, we primarily associate a lot of these sexual harassment incidents that happen with women as far as being perpetuated on women, and that's principally what it is.
Right. Yeah.
But stories like his, and Terry Crews told a similar story of something that happened to him.
Yeah.
Of this can happen to men as well in Hollywood, and it's obviously oftentimes by men themselves also, and so he felt this sense of shame. And this was back in 2003. It would have been a lot for a woman to speak out even about this stuff, much less a man. And he talks about that sense of shame and guilt of, wow, can I step up and speak out? I just don't know if I can do that. So he said that he thinks that played a role, not an entire role, as far as why his work maybe started to dry up.
And he even said that when the Me Too stuff started happening, he still felt like he couldn't say anything, and that he finally was able to, talk about that, and that's, obviously a big deal. But it should be said, importantly, that Philip Burke, that SOB that did that, just recently got expelled from the Hollywood Foreign Press, supposedly for a racist email.
Let me just ask this question, too. Has anything ever good come out of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association?
No,
and
never.
The Golden Globes?
We've talked about the Oscars briefly. I don't think we'll ever talk about the Golden Globes. Here's the moment where we will. They're garbage, and I don't want to pay attention to them. But I want to read some of this that they had said about him.
Okay. There's a Hollywood Reporter article.
That was randomly written by Scott Feinberg, who was the guy who had that whole little thing with David Crosby. But
we didn't. But once I heard Neil's songs that he was writing, it wasn't any question in my mind. I wanted to be in a band with that guy. And he was writing wonderful songs, a much higher level than most people around him. He hadn't really developed yet into the lead guitar player that he is now, the outrageous lead guitar player that he is now, who doesn't sound like any other human being on the planet. But he did have those songs, and to me, songs are the Jacks are better. They're the real meat of the matter. You can dress it up any way you want. It still has to start with a song. And a good one. He's a really good writer when he wants to be.
Well, to talk about a beautifully written song, second album, just a year later, included Our House. And what I wanted to ask you about that was, here's something where you had been romantically involved with Joni Mitchell, then you moved on, but when you now have a song, first of all, where Graham is now involved with her, and then there's a song about that, I wondered, was it tough to sing about her now being with somebody else, or were you just already moved on to other, obviously you'd had your own...
So you watched the documentary?
Of course I watched the documentary, but...
Okay, well, you need to go back and watch it again.
I'm teeing up a question for you.
Graham was unquestionably the best person for Joni.
Yeah.
And it was a good match, and I was quite happy about it.
Yeah. And you recognize that song immediately was a special one.
I'm kind of a dumb guy, you know that?
Well, I can see why some of these other guys have a problem with you. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. But don't come here and insult me.
Hey, you're an asshole, man. You fucking go through fucking kindergarten shit here.
Yeah?
You got somebody in front of you who can answer stuff that's serious, and we could have talked about all kinds of serious shit, and you're going through fucking infantile crap that anybody could have got out of a fucking book.
Yeah. Okay, well, good.
You're a dipshit.
Bye. Take care.
Hopefully we were able to
that's one of my
find
favorite
that.
exchanges,
Yeah. And that's something for another day to discuss, because that's just hilarious. I remember when that happened, that was a big deal.
Big deal.
But anyway, so let's see. It says Philip Burke, a member of the I'm not going to read this whole thing, but a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association for the past 44 years, 8-term president, expelled 2 days after emailing an article to his fellow members that described Black Lives Matter as a racist hate movement, and slammed its co-founder, Patrice Cullors, for purchasing a home in Topanga Canyon. Effective immediately, Philip Burke is no longer a member of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. There was something here specifically I wanted to read. Yeah. Oh, here it was. 88-year-old from South Africa received considerable backlash to his Sunday email from fellow members, according to Los Angeles Times, which received a copy of email chain. Here's the important part. One member labeled Burke's email as racist, another vile, and a third called him a thundering disgrace. While the HFPA's COO notified Burke that it was not appropriate behavior, Burke replied, "I only intended to illustrate the hypocrisy that engulfs us. I forwarded it as a point of information. I had no hidden agenda. I now regret having sent it."
And then it talks about the Fraser
thing. So, total SOB, total worthless, and he's gone. But isn't it sad it took this long for something like this to happen?
And I feel, it's good that Fraser was on his own, able to finally feel comfortable enough to come out and air these grievances. Yeah. And it's a shame, obviously, it had to happen in the first place. But if nothing else, his example is instructive of what can happen, that even men can be sexually harassed in Hollywood. But nonetheless, we don't want to end this on the down note with him. I mean, he's such a lovable, likable guy. Yeah. I know for our generation, he's probably among the most popular actors for a lot of people our age, I know.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been really good, I think, as just kind of everyman, charming
He's just one of those,
actor,
and this might sound weirdly condescending, I don't even mean it to be at all, is that he's just one of those guys, he's a pro. He just knows exactly what role he plays within a given project, and he just says, all right, I know what role I play. I may be the lead. I may be a cowboy in Hamburg part, whatever it is. Yeah. I'm going to play it to the exactly what it needs, and so he just always succeeds in that way. Also a guy mostly known for action comedy, but can do drama as well. Yeah. So, again, we love Brendan Fraser here at Overlapping Dialogue, and I know we know a great many others too.
Oh, yeah. So Rachel Weisz as Evelyn Carnahan. She's it says a clumsy but brilliant Egyptologist. Evelyn undertakes the expedition to Hamunaptra to discover an ancient book, proving herself to her peers. So yeah, she's basically this Egyptologist that works in the kind of library in Cairo, and that she kind of comes across this stuff, learns about the Book of the Dead can actually be found in Hamunaptra, and her brother, played by John Hannah, basically decide they're going to go there, and that, like I said, they kind of find Rick O'Connell to help them do that. What do you have to say about Rachel Weisz?
Well, it's weird that for so long I totally associated her with these movies. Yeah. And so it was weird in the last 10-ish years. It's like, oh, wait a minute, she acts in other things as well. And not only that, is a great actor in a lot of independent kind of drama
The
stuff.
Light Between Oceans, The Lobster,
and speaking of The Lobster, The Favorite, really these Yorgos Lanthimos movies of recent years, I've really remembered her in, especially in The Lobster.
Yeah, because I rewatched that recently with some friends of mine. One of them had seen it, one of them haven't, and of course it went over beautifully. Everybody I know that's seen that loves that movie.
Do we want to briefly talk about our experience seeing The Lobster for the first time?
We can, yeah. So, well, you go ahead and talk about that.
This was in 2016, the year of all cursed years, as we all know. Mm-hmm. Where were we? Greensboro?
Yeah.
It was Greensboro. We were...
hate to admit this.
Okay, so we were going to see a certain comedian by the name of Louis C.K., who at the time we were huge fans of. Yeah. And he was funny for whatever it's worth at that show. But we were in Greensboro for the day, and we don't like Louis C.K. anymore.
No, I mean, not to defend ourselves, but this was before his whole fall from grace. Not only the sexual stuff that came out, that some of the Me Too stuff, but things he said after the fact, some kind of political things that were very abhorrent. But anyway, and so we're not fans of him anymore.
No.
And we regret even doing that. But
anyway,
another good thing about that day.
And so
the only good thing about that day, maybe we should say.
I'd say going to see The Lobster and seeing our dear friend Justin Carr, who we met at the Louis C.K. So he's implicated too. Yeah. If you're listening, Justin, you were there too. Yeah. Anyways, we're just kidding. Yeah. So we went. What was the name of the movie theater we saw it in?
The Red Cinema.
The Red Cinema.
And it was red. It was painted red inside.
This is a very strange movie theater. I'm not even sure if it even exists anymore. It's one of those things I feel like it materialized right before we came, and then it slightly faded away into the night after we left the city. It just had this really weird vibe about it. It literally felt like something in a David Lynch movie.
Yeah, it was weird. It looks like it's still there.
It's still there.
Wait, let me look. Anyway, keep
so
going.
Red Cinemas. Sure. So we got there to see The Lobster, and
temporarily closed. I don't know if yeah. So they're temporarily closed. I don't know. Maybe that means forever.
That we got there. It was a small theater, and it felt big.
It was like an amphitheater almost.
Yeah,
it was really weird.
And it was like easy to get lost in it. All the walls were painted red. Like I said, you feel like you were in a David Lynch thing or something.
Yeah.
And then we got to see The Lobster, and who all was there? It was like
like an older couple, a kind of middle-aged couple.
And
maybe
then about
one or two other people.
10 minutes into the movie, something like that, it was like some frat college guys came in to watch it.
Which is funny because they missed the opening where the woman goes and shoots her, like, presumably husband or whoever it was that was the donkey or whatever.
Yeah.
So they
and
missed
so
on
that movie is weird enough.
Yeah.
But then just a lot of circumstances that day just made the movie.
Yeah, by the way, if you're
weirder.
confused by a woman whose husband was donkey, she went to shoot, go look up what that movie's about.
Or
we don't have time to litigate that and watch it. But yeah, that was, and they loved it too. By the way, those guys, I think they were so funny.
Were they? I don't remember if they sold alcohol at this place. I kind of think they did.
I think they did,
and I think they were a little juiced
That was
up.
also, I think, the first time I ever saw Olivia Colman. Well, no, I had seen her in Hot Fuzz, but other than that, that was the first time I'd seen Olivia Colman in anything, I think, too. But so what I was going to say, that's a whole weird experience that's hilarious. If you want to know more about that, talk to us in person one of these days about that whole experience. And maybe if we do that movie eventually, we can kind of retell that story. I'm sure we probably will. But one thing I'll say about that movie, I rewatched it here recently, and I was really paying attention to her in the movie because she's a character in the movie, but she's also the narrator of the movie. And she only but she's narrator for half the movie and, most of the movie, but you're like, who's this character that's narrating? And she's not physically in the movie until about halfway through. But that whole movie's really weird because Yorgos Lanthimos is Greek and he writes his movies in Greek and then he translates them into English. And then the way that the people act, it's just a totally other world of the way people act in those movies. But some of the line readings of her in that are stuff that is so funny, but she's so deadpan. And it's really weird to see these movies, and she's very kind of joyful and charismatic. And but then you see that, and she's very like, especially later in the movie where she can't see anymore, and she's just even more sitting there, not moving, and being even less emotive. So yeah, she's great in that, and in The Favorite as well.
Yes, that's also got Emma Stone and Olivia Colman again.
And she's somebody I haven't seen a lot of movies that she's in, but everything she's in I think's great, and I'd love to see more. I
heard a lot of great things about this movie she was in called The Deep Blue Sea. I never did see that. It was a drama romantic drama.
Okay.
I heard was good. But we love Rachel Weisz.
Yeah.
Need to see more though.
Yeah.
Now somebody else we need to see more of that I've always liked in this movie, John Hannah.
Yeah. Wasn't he in as the brother? He was in that one show,
Spartacus.
Spartacus, yeah, and then he was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it says, although you watched some of the first season of that, right?
Yeah, like 1 or 2 episodes.
He doesn't know, does he?
Yeah.
That whole moment. Oh, and then 4 Weddings and a Funeral, I guess. I haven't ever seen that. That's probably like kind of the biggest thing he's in other than this. He's great.
He's, great comic relief. Almost the archetype for comic relief, I'd say, in these type of movies.
And we'll talk more about him throughout. Arnold Vosloo, I guess how you say that. Arnold Vosloo.
Vosloo,
or something like that. As Imhotep. The only other thing I've seen him in memorably is Blood Diamond.
Yeah.
Where it's a TIA. Yeah. This is Africa.
Yeah, I do remember him in that.
But he's good. He has a lot he has to do in the movie, I think, where he actually is really pretty good.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can kind of talk about him throughout, but very funny performance though too. It's very kind of serious to the point where it's hilarious. But
like you said, it's a randomly challenging role in terms of like phically too, in terms of some stuff he's doing with his body.
All that stuff. I was doing a physical, whatever. Look it up. So Kevin J. O'Connor is Beni Gabor. One thing, and he's, by the way, what even is he? He's like this character in the movie that's kind of in the French Foreign Legion with Rick, and then he's basically like this traveler around type. He's a lot like the Ray Winstone character in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, kind of, which is
he's basically just following the money. He has no real.
He's kind of helping out the Americans. He's kind of the guide for the Americans because he's also one of the only other people who's been to Hamunaptra and lived. He doesn't live in his second visit. Well, another thing about him in this also is that he's Hungarian. I never realized that. So that's
it's another thing too. That's like, if we're talking about certain stereotypes or archetypes his character plays into, it's a role that if this was made in the 40s, Peter Lorre would have played this part. Yeah. In terms of this kind
he's
of
very
greasy,
much like the
grimy,
Casablanca character of Peter Lorre.
Rick, you must help me. I mean, he's basically that's where he's at in this movie.
Your strength gives me strength. Yeah. I mean, I am immune.
Yeah. Well, so this is where we want to present this opportunity. That we've decided on this show, we want to create a sort of a ring of honor, a hall of fame, a way to commemorate those who are close to our hearts.
Yeah.
And so, for the very first kind of inaugural
on our 20th
episode, we are creating the immune and or the immunized. Yes. Those who we just
gotten the COVID vaccine.
Well, I was actually thinking that we're doing this as COVID is seemingly here, at least in America, knock on wood, knock on metal, starting to wrap up a little bit.
Maybe.
Kind of, sort of. How many more qualifiers can confirm that? But this actually has less to do with the literal
that
COVID-19 is on the scene, as Iggy Pop let us know.
She's 19, but she'll kill you.
Yeah. But look that up. Iggy Pop's COVID-19
well, no,
song.
it's called Dirty Little Virus.
Dirty Little Virus. Look it up.
Sleeping inside us.
Yeah. But we just want to create our own little ring of honor or hall of fame for those we just find to be very important and very subtly people that we love.
Yeah, kings and queens.
Yes. And there will be queens to
and
come
days, maybe. Who knows?
As well. Yes. So Kevin J. O'Connor, again, we got to know him through this movie especially. Less than 10 years later, of course, though, he'd be in one of another favorite movie of ours, There Will Be Blood.
Yeah. And then The Master.
And then more recently, it was great to even see him pop up again, Widows.
Yeah. And he's really good the little bit he's in that. There's that scene where he's getting beat up by Kaluuya that's pretty
well, he's like, and
it's like funny,
he's a guy in a
wheelchair,
and he's like attacking and stabbing his legs, and he's paralyzed, and so he doesn't feel anything in the legs, and so
and it's like it's one of those things in the movie where it makes you laugh, but then you're like, oh, I shouldn't be laughing at that. It's very
but we love Kevin J. O'Connor. He's always just a really great character actor who pops up and stuff. And he's just so good in this movie. I think he is subtly the best performance, and that might seem ridiculous, but I just think that in terms of just embodying
him and Fraser and Vice, I think are
really
all
just this grimy, slimy guy. It's unfortunate that there were spinoffs and other movies made of this. Honestly, him and Beni John Hannah, Jonathan should have had like a spinoff travel road movie. I would have loved to have seen that.
And they hate each other, but they're having to help each other out too. That would have been good.
That would have been good.
That would have been maybe they travel to Russia or something and have to go to the Siberia or something. That would
they get caught up in communism of the day.
That'd be interesting.
Stalin pops up as a character,
kind of like Hitler in Last Crusade,
right? So
that level of stupidity.
But so Kevin J. O'Connor, congratulations! You are the very first entry into the immune and or the immunized.
It is better to be the right hand of the devil than in his path. As long as I serve him, I am immune.
Yeah. So congratulations. We'll send you nothing in the mail.
Yeah.
We don't have your address.
We love you. So Jonathan Hyde. As
another
Dr.
hero.
Alan Chamberlain.
90s, late 90s was his era.
I don't know. We might have to put him in later. We can't put him in now because we can't have too many
there's
people
other opportunities that'll come up for him to be in.
Of course, he's been in so many things.
Again, the late 90s specifically.
Richie Rich is kind of one of the other biggest things. Titanic. He's also in Titanic and Jumanji. I forgot he was in that. He's the kind of like...
he specialized in a lot of these movies playing the hoity-toity British guy, basically.
Yeah.
Even in Richie Rich, he's Cadbury.
And in the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, I forgot about that.
He plays, that part. Or then, like in Titanic, he's, the ship can't sink, this arrogant kind of guy who thinks he's above the fray. In this, of course, he plays kind of an uptight British know-it-all.
Yeah. But he was in that show, The Strain.
Yeah.
Too. But he plays that type of guy. What would a woman know?
Yeah.
It's like, and then she immediately says way more than he knows. Like, it's very lightly one of the greatest feminist moments in movies. Honestly, modern movies. He's great. Great death.
Yeah.
Great. Sienna. Great performance. As you'll guess, we're going to be quoting the whole movie the whole time.
We quote this movie to each other all the time. So
this is one of those movies we can do that with. Yeah. Oded Fair, I guess they say that, as Ardith Bay. It's important to note that Ardith Bay was the name that Imhotep took in his human form in the original film, so that in its own way is a reference to that. In this, he's kind of the leader of the Magi who kind of look over the Hamunaptra and make sure that
basically
people
trying
don't,
to keep white people away.
Loot it, and don't loot it or invoke the curse. He's really good. He's also in the sequel.
And he kind of presents this like he's not quite on the surface good or bad. He's this other force that's a protector of this place.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he kind of befriends and becomes part of Rick's gang, basically.
And especially in the second movie, he just goes off. Yeah. And just like that movie, even more than this movie, just has so much gunplay in it. Like, the best sequence in that movie is where they go to the museum and they got those Tommy guns and they're shooting everything. Yeah, and he's good in this. He's really good. Eric Avari.
He always reminds me of George Harrison in this.
Yeah, he does look like George. I've never thought about that, but now, Eric Avari is Dr. Terrence Bay. He's also secretly in the Magi. It doesn't reveal that, though, until later. Since he's also in Independence Day. I don't remember him in that.
Offhand, I'm trying to think. Is he
that guy that is like... No, that's not him, is it? Trying to think, he isn't that guy that's like Jeff Goldblum's boss, is he?
No, that's that Rodney Firestein guy.
Okay,
I can't remember.
That's what I was saying, because I didn't think they looked alike that much, but I was trying to think of who he is in that. Let's see. Sorry, we got to figure this out. It says he's SETI chief.
Harvey Firestein's that boss, is what.
Okay. Yeah. He kind of looks alike. They kind of look alike in that movie. Anyway, he's some guy in the background. It looks like he was uncredited, supposedly.
I think it's like when I'm taking a swing at this. I think when they're like communicating with the other nations of like, this is how we're going to attack the aliens. He's vaguely Middle Eastern guy or something. I think.
But yeah, he's good in this. He's only in a little bit. Great death. He's like, go, and has that like sword and like
he plays exasperation really well.
Yeah, because early on, sons of the pharaohs. Give me frogs, flies, locusts, anything but you.
Compared to the other plagues, you're a joy, or they're a joy, or whatever. Yeah.
So, when Ramses destroyed Syria, that was an accident. You are a catastrophe. Look at my library. Why do I put up with you?
Why do I put up with you?
By the way, I was thinking about that line last night of when Ramses destroyed Syria, that was an accident. That's like saying when Michael Cimino bankrupted United Artists, that was an accident. It's like, but anyway. Totally great. Stephen Dunham is Isaac Henderson.
There's kind of these American guys. They kind of run together.
Right. And then Corey Johnson is another one. He's kind of my favorite guy.
Sucking them dry. That's how.
Yeah, I think wasn't that guy also in 1993, Born Ultimatum, Captain Phillip. Yeah, it looks like he's in a lot of Paul Greengrass stuff. Ex Machina. I forgot he was in Ex Machina. Okay, I didn't know that. And then
there's only like 3 people
other
usually
guy,
remember.
Tuck Watkins. He's the guy that.
His tonsils.
Please
sticking out.
forgive me.
Yeah.
They're all good enough. They're very goofy.
Yeah.
I always actually like. A lot of people don't like this. I like seeing goofy Americans in things because it makes you think about. And this was an American movie, but it makes you think about how we.
But most of our main characters aren't Americans; right. They're British.
Yeah. So it's Americans. Yeah. I mean, Oh God, Dajali as Warden Gad Hassan. He's other than Beni, my favorite thing in this movie. Yeah, and that moment earlier, I'm a very lonely man, and of course loosen the knot and let me go.
See in the if they did the Beni and Jonathan Spinoff, he would have been at the very end, the Barbossa reveal, like in Dead Man's Chest.
Like, why did we need to know
and then
that
he's
going to
be in the sequel of that franchise.
But he has a scarab in his brain. Yeah. And it's like...
and so then they send him messages that he just like... It's just like that he pops into.
He's like, ah! Yeah. He's great. Some other things he's in. He does some voice work.
Ballad of Gay Tony.
The Ballad of Gay Tony, the GTA 4 game. And then he's also... that like real hoity-toity other cat character in Over the Hedge randomly, because I rewatched that here recently and I was like, oh, that's Omid Djalali's in that. Yeah, he's one of the best things.
I'm glad that something came out of rewatching Over the Hedge.
Well,
I mean, not that it's that much, bad, but
yeah. Aaron Ipale, who is the Pharaoh Imhotep, my son, or whatever he says. Yeah.
I want to talk about some logical things of that moment later when we get to the movie.
Yeah. He's only at the beginning. He's in the like introduction kind of prologue. Bernard Fox. Oh Lord, I'm coming, laddies! As the Captain Winston Havelock. He's basically
he represents just like Britain of the 19th century. Just like I'm of this great imperial
kind
breed,
of post World War I type. But he would have been older than that. But that. He basically sits around the bar in Cairo and drinks all day, and then they're like, "We need somebody to fly us," and he's like, "Okay," and then goes down with the ship.
I think,
right. And then Patricia Velasquez is an Oxana Moon. She has a little bit of a bigger role in the second movie as this other character, but she's the original incarnation of an Oxana Moon. She's good. Okay, so that's
what was the box office and budget for this? I know it made more than
the budget $80 million. It made $416.4 million.
That's a good return. Yeah.
So yeah, it made its money. Of course, Stephen Sommers. It should be said.
Well, we haven't really said anything about him.
Well, there's not an awful lot to say. I hate to say he made some of these movies. He made the Van Helsing movie,
which kind of is owed to the success of this. They were attempting to do this whole action horror.
I wasn't aware he had made The Adventures of Huck Finn.
In 93,
with Elijah Wood, Courtney B. Vance, Jason Robards, and Robbie Coltrane. That sounds interesting. I've never really even heard of that.
Yeah.
And then he made a version of The Jungle Book, Deep Rising, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra.
This is by far, though, the movies I feel like that have really stuck with the...
And Jerry Goldsmith did the score. Very memorable score, of course. It's a Universal movie.
And so, again, I just want to touch on what a big deal this movie was to a great many of us growing up. It is kind of this generational touchstone.
Yeah.
And again, and we mentioned this a little bit in the past, this really, we had no idea. It's one of those things, you have no idea how blessed you are until after the fact, and you look back and go, oh, wow, what a cool time that was. How in vogue in the 90s and even going into the early 2000s a little bit, it was for these kind of big budget, period action adventure films.
Yeah.
And again, I think I said this last week too. I think probably, loosely speaking, you can trace the strain of this back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, with those movies in the 80s. But then in the 90s, again, you get a great many of these other movies that are trying to be this kind of pulpy, serial-inspired adventure storytelling that, of course, are period movies. The Rocketeer,
The Phantom,
The Spirit. Some of those are like the Spirit and the Phantom are directly inspired by
comic book strips,
or comic magazines or pulpy magazines of the 30s and 40s. And some of those things are themselves pulling from Batman, I think, a little bit in terms of that as a superhero movie, those franchises.
Yeah.
The cream of the crop for me is Mask of Zorro.
Yeah, that is
this
unimpeachable.
Movie, that movie and this, I grew up watching ad nauseum and still deeply love. And I think this is pretty good, has some holes. We rewatched Mask of Zorro not all that long ago. That's almost a perfect movie.
Yeah,
I mean, top to bottom. I mean, everything about it. It's
not one man did Zorro.
it's fun. It's quotable. Yeah. It's just also it's withholding of Zorro is Antonio Banderas as Zorro. How late into the movie it is, and you don't care.
Yeah.
Because the movie's just so good, and he
well,
has
and
all these
it
other
starts
things
as Hopkins
to do.
and Hopkins, and it's a very typical like new generation story, but I think that's one of the better ones. And like you said, yeah, Antonio Banderas I think is really good in pretty much everything, but especially that movie, he really carries it to a point where, like you said, it's kind of we're waiting for nobody stuff's like Jack and all that stuff that happens before.
Well, I was
gonna
say you're waiting, but you don't
you're
realize
having a good time.
But honestly, you don't care, and a lot of these movies are it's trying to get the characters in, trying to do a first movie of what seems could be a franchise. Right. The origin story is all about trying to get them as quickly into the costume as possible, and you're having just so much fun. You don't even really think about it. You're just it's just this is how long it's taken, and then Anthony Hopkins I think is pretty,
Catherine Zeta-Jones is great.
Sure. So it's just really fun movie. And again, what I love about these movies, like you were talking about how this inspired you to be more interested in ancient Egypt in its own way, and this even in the 1920s, this time period.
Yeah.
That was the Mask of Zorro was just a huge education to me in terms of just like Spanish Mexico
and Spanish
California and like how America was going further west and hadn't quite really taken control of California yet. All those kind of that like early to mid 19th century stuff I just didn't know about, and that was the first time I really took all that in. And so that's what's really lost to me on we've complained about modern movies all the time, and we will continue to.
Yeah.
Really lost on modern movies is they don't have this little like kind of they don't feel like these little pocket guidebooks to world history or history, or just the around the world, telling you about this or that.
Right, and they often inject supernatural things into them. Zorro doesn't really do that, which I think is interesting about that. But there's still so much history baked into that, and it sucks that we don't do that
So where
anymore.
do you think The Mummy fits into this kind of tradition?
I think it's up there. I mean, and I haven't seen I've seen The Phantom, I've seen Mask of Zorro. I've seen what's some other ones we had said? I haven't seen The Shadow. I haven't seen The Spirit. I've seen Dick Tracy. That movie's awful.
Dick Tracy
I kind of love it, but it's
Dick Tracy's such a bizarre movie, and again, I'm a Warren Beatty devotee to the bitter end, and I'll like that movie exists in its own way, but it is definitely something, that I'm not sure it's
right.
Another random movie too you could throw into this even is The Last of the Mohicans. I think it's kind of this adventure.
Well, that would be one of the best
drama too.
Maybe even the best. I don't know. That or Mask of Zorro. Yeah. I mean, this is up there, but there are a lot of those though that like I haven't seen. The Rocketeer, or this is even a little later, but Sky Captain and The World of Tomorrow. I haven't seen all of that, but. There's so many of these movies that got made around that time that it really was the time of the adventure movie, and that's the thing that people they wouldn't understand, frankly, now is it's like, well, they have all these Marvel movies and there's all this action in them, and it's like, yeah, but they don't have the sense of, first of all, history or stakes, really. They have stakes about the end of the universe, but it's like, that's so big, it's frankly boring. It's like, whatever.
You do have, I guess, like the Captain America movies. The first one is like set in the World War II era.
Now that is more of a stock adventure movie. I do like that is that. But yeah, we kind of lost that, and that was even before these movies. In the 2000s, you didn't really have movies like that.
Well, I think really the Pirates were the last gasp of those type of movies.
Right.
That's why we were randomly cited for Jungle Cruise.
Because it's a version of that. I mean,
that,
I just eat this stuff up. I mean, I love it.
As people who love history and who love action, adventure, storytelling, that's just like the best of both worlds in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially, and this movie's so funny. It just has an energy that.
And what's particular about this movie, and one of the topics we wanted to discuss is this whole idea of combining action and horror together.
Yeah,
you don't see that very often. No. And I think that's a very difficult line to hit on.
Edgar Wright kind of does that.
Did you see
sometimes.
Van Helsing?
No, not all of it.
I remember seeing that when it came out, and I remember being a big fan of this. I was like, oh, it's going to be another version of that, and it even said that was around the time I started to barely pay attention to directors' names, and it was like from the director of The Mummy, and I was like, oh, well, I love The Mummy, then I love that, and that's a good example of the wrong impulses. In some ways, it's getting us closer to what became as far as, quote, teaming up, and you got all these big characters, and it's like a team-up movie, and it's like trying too hard as opposed to investing in the characters that you have.
Right.
That's what this movie does. That's what many of these other great examples of this, like Mask of Zorro does, is that they really invest in the characters in their own way. And then again, we're not talking Shakespeare here, but in terms of just kind of crackerjack storytelling, popcorn movies, these are just run really smoothly. They don't try too hard. There was some sequels made to these, which I will touch on here in a little bit, but it doesn't feel like it's laying groundwork for sequels. It's using everything that it has. And remember that era barely when,
and even the second movie doesn't feel like it's doing anything but a continuation. It wasn't setting up for Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. And that isn't setting up for anything either that I remember.
But this whole like horror action combination is a very particular one that I think weirdly it's the ingredients got to be just right for it. But when it hits, it's a very distinct kind of peanut butter and chocolate feeling.
I was trying to think a different version of this. I said it a moment ago. You have some of the Edgar Wright films like Shaun of the kind of Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End all have versions of that. The biggest version of this is zombie movies. I feel like I'm not going to act like anything other than George Romero zombie movies exist because none do. I'm not aware of any. You know, I'm assuming 28 Days Later is that too.
That's
I haven't
supposedly
seen
good.
That,
we haven't seen that. Danny Boyle.
And then like From Dusk Till Dawn, the Robert Rodriguez film is an action horror movie sort of. So there are versions of that sort of thing, but like you said, it doesn't happen that often. Some of the James Gunn films also, Slither and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a very particular thing that usually, and in this case, it's more of an action movie than it's a horror movie. It's like we said about horror comedy, it's usually one or the other. It's either a comedy or it's a horror movie. It's not really,
leave and split.
Kind of like Beetlejuice is like a movie I love so much, and I'm like, I guess it's kind of a horror movie, but it's more just kind of a weird supernatural comedy about paranormal. It's like not necessarily.
Maybe one day we'll get around to having that conversation.
I'm sure we will. Yeah. But so yeah, like you said, it's very rare, but it actually happens here and there. But even zombie movies aren't. Like I said, it depends on the movie, but they can definitely be action movies, and often they are, but it kind of depends.
So what do we think about the impulse to make this a franchise? Obviously, as we saw, that it made all this money, and so naturally, you make money. We know what Hollywood's going to do. They're going to make a franchise out of it.
Yeah.
I have not seen The Mummy Returns in a little while now, but we grew up watching that quite a bit as well.
I rewatched that a couple years ago with a friend of mine in college, and it's not very good. He said this, and it's true. My friend, dear friend Ryan, he said, it's all good until the dirigible showed up. Where there's that character who has that dirigible
which
thing.
I love that guy, though.
Oh, yeah, but he was right in saying that the movie totally switched gears, and it, like, the movie totally switches gears and kind of goes in this whole other direction that's really stupid. But the first half is, like, really great action.
This is a chance for me to mention this, too. I was wondering when I was going to get to it. I'll just do it now. There's a really awesome Facebook page called Memotep.
Yeah, Memotep's Mummy Memes.
Memotep's Mummy Memes. That I really, if you're a fan of this movie, I'd recommend you go watch. Every day, dozens of posts are made that are all about this movie, and a lot of them are like taking shots at the Tom Cruise Mummy movie as it's lesser than, and I'll say this, I think it's actually a weirdly, wildly creative
it's pretty
place,
good.
And the variety of memes that they come up with, and the variety of the specificity of them are very weird.
It's like you put one on Instagram just yesterday about
Anakin.
It's if you're aware, there's been this Anakin, and I hate memes, but anyway, I've talked about this before, but this is actually kind of a funny meme where it's like Anakin says something, and then Padme's like, yeah, but this, right? And then it cuts back to his face, and then she's like, but this, right? Yeah. And this one, it was like,
from episode 2, by the way.
Any last requests?
Yeah.
And it shows the picture of Rick O'Connell, like, in the noose early in the movie. He's like, loosen the knot and let me go. And then it just shows his face looking at him and his face looking again. Really funny. But yeah, they're really.
But
creative
I would
over
recommend
there.
you go to that page if you're interested in the Mummy movies or just want a good laugh. They're really funny. And
they are good.
Firewalk with Memes used to be really on the ball in terms of posting a lot of stuff.
I think it's just the fact that's kind of dried up a little bit, but this is still pretty new, and I think it'll stay.
Levi, as he said, he despises memes. I'm a little more agnostic on certain things. I do think are funny.
I mean there are funny memes, but what I don't like is
humor.
Internet humor is pretty stupid, but also on Twitter, when a meme happens, everybody does one, and it goes on for a week, and then a new one. It's just this cycle of continuous crap that just happens, and everybody thinks they're so funny. And it's like, everybody's doing this. There's nothing funny about, unless you're like Eric Allen Hatch or
he's
something.
The king, yeah.
He usually takes the memes and does the Possession, that movie Possession, or like John Waters meme, or he always takes it and does this other thing with it that is.
Again, he's the king.
Yeah,
I think.
But anyway, so
where
are we at here? We have
again, you've seen the third movie.
Yes,
I've not seen that. Impressions.
Totally forgettable.
It should be said that was like a good 6 years after, right?
And I like the fact that they tried to do like a Chinese ancient civilization thing, but it's just very unmemorable. I'd like to rewatch it because I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater, and then haven't seen it since. So
another thing is too, I had totally forgot about this until we were doing some research about going into this movie, thinking about it.
Yeah.
The animated TV show that was made, I remember seeing some episodes of that. Another thing too, this movie inspired a Game Boy Color game, and I remember playing that a lot.
Yeah.
And thinking it was good at the time. I just went on Facebook and went back and rewatched some playthroughs of it. The graphics, that's a whole other thing, whatever. But the movie or the game itself just looked pretty bad and mediocre.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh wow, okay. And so that
I had forgotten about that too, because I remember we had a Game Boy Color. Yeah.
I want to say though, the theme park ride at Universal Studios is pretty fun. I like that quite a bit. I've ridden that several times when I've been there. What's cool about that is, as you're walking up to the ride, there's like this kind of faux interview with Brendan Fraser. You're watching clips of as Brendan Fraser, not as like Rick O'Connell.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, you see him again. And I remember a few instances, this goes back to why everybody loves Brendan Fraser, that when I was waiting in line for that, people were actively watching and laughing at all the lines and kind of paying attention to it. And then you go through the whole ride, and the ride's like, I was rewatching a ride, somebody videotaped themselves going through it, and it doesn't look nearly as intense in that video like all that does. It doesn't feel nearly as intense as the ride feels. But I saw somebody going through it again, and I was remembering it. And again, it's a really good, fun ride that I think is indicative of this movie feeling like a ride of sorts. And then at the very end, when Brendan Fraser comes back and is like doing the last little bit as the ride ends, I remember the instances I wrote it and people laughing and cheering just seeing him.
Yeah.
And again, I think that just speaks to his, very specific movie stardom that people fell in love with this movie and other movies as well. Right. So the ride's really fun if you're ever in Universal. There were rumors they were going to close it maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's actually going to happen
While
or not.
you're looking that up, there's one thing I want to say here about the way that it talks about the ride. You can there's a Wikipedia page for the ride.
Yeah.
And I was going to read, because at the end of that, it goes back to him, and I'm going to read this, what it says. The passengers travel, this is at the end of the ride. The passengers travel through a tunnel of flickering lights with a screen in front of them. Rick O'Connell is portrayed by Brendan Fraser. It was an interview, like you said. Hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I would have enjoyed this interview a lot more if I had gotten my cup of coffee. And then this is my favorite part, is the way it describes this. Suddenly, a cape passes over the screen, and Imhotep's arm offers Fraser a cup of coffee. As Fraser screams and falls back in his chair, the screen fades to black, while riders hear Imhotep roaring over Fraser's screams, ending the ride. Riders are then directed to exit through an actual unload station. At the exit of the ride, riders see a missing persons poster with a picture of Reggie on it. I don't know who Reggie was, but
actually, I'm not seeing anything about that. I think I just heard rumors.
Oh, he was a crew member. Okay.
But you know what scares me though about Universal, and let's just say this. Let's put it out there. Universal Studios is a theme park experience. better than Disney World.
Yeah,
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people get offended by that, and most people who haven't even been to Universal, so
I don't
whatever.
know why they would get offended, but why we care.
But
why would
as
they care
far as
about
if
what
you
we
really
think about
love
that? But
movies,
yeah.
if you love movies, not just necessarily
Yeah.
the Disney brand, which I'm agnostic on,
Yeah.
then I just think Universal is the better theme park. What scares me though is that, like, and this is just indicative of all theme parks, is things get replaced in these things. The Jaws ride got replaced for more Harry Potter stuff, which the Harry Potter stuff, world class.
Oh yeah, no,
brilliant.
it's amazing.
I mean, as Harry Potter fans,
yeah,
we were floored by how well that's done. But we're talking about Jaws here.
Yeah.
Jaws is one of the fundamental movies, the fundamental movie of the Universal's Studios lifespan.
Yeah.
And the fact that they would get rid of that, and that's a fun little ride itself. When I was lucky enough to ride it, they got rid of it now.
Yeah.
It's very sick and disgusting to me, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
That they would get rid of that in favor of more.
But you know what's
Potter
funny
stuff.
is they still have the picture of, you know how where you go there and you go to parking there, and they have the signs that dictate like, it's so you can remember I'm in the ET section or I'm in the King Kong section. They still have the Jaws section there, but it's like you don't have the Jaws ride anymore. Now that just shows they're lazy and don't want to change the pictures out. But like
they got like Harry, Spider-Man and all those.
Yeah, because they have the whole Islands of Adventure area. Yeah, love Universal, but yeah, that's a shame, and that would be really.
And so I'm just really scared that
about
this
the Mummy
one will probably get changed too eventually. But anyways, go to Universal if you've never been. It's a lot of fun, like I said.
So, I guess the next thing we're going to talk about, we're getting kind of close to the end here for our intro, but the kind of remake stuff. What do you have to say about that? Just in general.
Again, just
this and other ones.
We're
going to talk about that already, specifically with this movie.
Remakes are a tricky thing because it's weird to even call this movie exactly a remake because, like we said, it's almost a fundamentally different type of movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of taking some basic names and some basic archetypal elements and saying, well, we're going to totally do this other thing now. And I think that's sometimes the way to go with remakes. I think remakes that try to just simply trace in what came before it are usually some of the most unsuccessful ones. But ones that usually kind of take it, rework the form and say, well, we're going to do this with it or this different or that different.
Yeah.
As different as possible, honestly, is better, I think.
Yeah.
And that you're using a brand identification to do something else. I think it's oftentimes the best thing to do.
And sadly, most remakes are too scared to do something like that. And as we saw in the, reviews, and there's people that we even know we won't name that feel this way about it. It wasn't like the original 1932 movie, or it wasn't faithful to that. I'll say it as a big fan of those original types of movie, or no, well, I'd still call myself a fan of the Universal Monster movies. This is a better movie than that is, and it's mainly because it accomplishes pretty much everything that movie does, but with action and more charisma. Now, it's a totally different movie. I mean, these movies were made nearly over 60 years, nearly 70 years apart. I mean, what can be similar about them, really?
And cinemas is still a relatively new art form, and by 32, it was still feet wet. I mean,
right, and that's fine, but it's like the fact people even are comparing it, I think, is kind of useless in a way, and we kind of did that earlier, but So, yeah, I mean, I think that this is one of the most successful remakes I can think of as far as that.
Well, it launched this whole other identity of what the, quote, franchise of this is, And
I get it, there's a lot of people who are like, well, people need to be, Joe Dante says it all the time, and he's not wrong. It's like, kids don't like watching black and white. And he, of course, said, F them if they don't want to watch black and white. He said that one time. And it's like, yeah, I mean, but it's like, this movie shouldn't have to bear the burden of that. It's a new movie. It's wanting to do its own thing. And if people haven't seen that original one, well, maybe this will make them go see it. It would be interesting to me, actually, to see people who don't really like older movies and they love this, go watch that. And they are going to be so underwhelmed by it. And I'm not saying they're right to even be that way, but it's like, well, I mean, but even still, it's a pretty underwhelming movie, even in its own way, honestly. So... And I say this as somebody who used to really love that movie and beat the drum for it, and I still do in my own way, but it's like, I mean, but this is better, so I don't know. But anyway, it's fun, and it's been remade again. But and frankly, I'll randomly go here. This has been the whole mummy idea has been subtly remade multiple times. I literally watched yesterday for the first time Black Sunday, the Mario Bava Italian film. It's not technically a Giallo film because it's kind of a progenitor of that, but that movie, you had seen that before some years ago, but I watched it for the first time yesterday.
I'm yawning. I would say it's a coincidence, but I don't know if it is.
As your review of that movie, I'm going to find is literally the best thing that anybody could ever say about it. Is very simple.
I don't even remember what I said.
You said an immaculate rendering of inert material. It's a really well-made movie, great looking, but literally the story is literally about. By the way, she's a vampire witch. Barbara Steele in the movie. So couldn't she have been a vampire or a witch? Did she have to be both? Anyway. It's kind of like that whole I married a witch, that 40s movie. It's kind of like that, but basically that it's like, this witch was killed and burned at the stake, but she's resurrected every 100 years or whatever. It's like 200 years later or something. And anyway, but it's basically there's this version of her that looks the same, another Barbara Steele. And she's wanting to like suck in her life force. It's literally the Mummy again, basically of that time. This was made in like 1960, so it's like way before this. But and a lot of people think that's like one of the best horror movies ever made, which I think is just interesting. I mean, it's a really well made.
I mean, that's
movie.
A really well regarded movie, and so there's probably some people listening to this thinking, "What, y'all just are not accepting that as this great thing?"
Yeah.
I was a little underwhelmed by it myself.
No, and I was too, and I liked it. I thought it was okay, but I was just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was frankly bored by it, and I'm not easily bored. Yeah. So anyway.
To that end of what you're saying, do you think sometimes the point of remakes are to take seemingly universal stories or ideas and then kind of just update them accordingly? That doesn't mean even totally the modern day, but saying how can we, quote, hit refresh on this?
Yeah.
Though I think the Star is Born franchise, if you want to call it that, is a version of this happening.
Of consistently.
You have the 30s one, the 50s one, which is nearly the best one, the 70s one, which I was frankly bored by, which is incredibly strange because I love Christopherson. I like Streisand.
Yeah.
I love 70s movies. And then the newest one with Cooper and Gaga, which I think is the best one, that it's like a basic idea, but then every so many years it's like, all right, let's do the new version of that. Right. Do you think that's kind of what remakes should serve as a model for certain types of stories?
Certain things, I think, yeah. Like I said, in this case, I think it's more of just a different style of movie with The Mummy. With stuff like that, I think it's good to remake that, like you said, that type of thing. And as much as we bemoan the remakes that have been made out of these Disney movies, take outside the fact that they've already been made into these Disney movies, those stories are all these like old fairy tales. That I think is worth remaking every so many years because, like you said, it's not necessarily even an update in the time period or the story, but it's just like reintroducing these ideas to people, which ultimately is what these new generations, which ultimately what The Mummy 1999 did, like I said, for the Mummy movie and Ancient Egypt and all those things. So I think that's the best of what a remake can do, other than just totally being great in its own way and changing different things. But
so now what you're saying is we need the fly for the Snapchat generation. It's like we need to update the fly.
Well, that's been remade enough times, and of course they're doing all these new versions of this, like The Invisible Man, which we already talked about some.
Where are you? Show yourself!
Surprise.
Which what I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think some people were probably thrown by it because it's not the same type of Invisible Man of the Claude Rains tradition that we did a podcast on. Or, and so...
by the way, we're consistently pissed off that people didn't listen.
Well, go listen to it, I don't know what else to say. But Then there was the Benicio del Toro Wolfman movie that came out some years ago that we love Benicio, but
we haven't seen that.
Haven't seen that. But there are apparently there's going to be a new Wolfman movie with Ryan Gosling, friend of the pod. Yeah, he has no idea we exist.
Who are y'all? We're talking about Dead Man's Bones.
Yeah,
but
I love Ryan Gosling anyways. That there's gonna. I think what Universal's trying to do now that they've kind of hopefully, fingers crossed, figured out that hey, we don't need to make this kind of shared universe exactly, but that instead we can kind of do a movie to movie series of stories. Right. And I think too that this Ryan Gosling iteration was apparently inspired partially by, I believe I'd heard. Nightcrawler, the Jake Gyllenhaal movie. That's going to be something.
I could see that being like a Wolfman version of that.
So hopefully, that's what we see with these different things. Is this? Let's not try to build some big shared universe. Let's just take it movie to movie and try to reinvent, in quotes, these monsters for new generations.
Yeah,
and we're cynical about a lot of things in Hollywood, as we should. But who knows? Some of those could be good. Invisible Man was good.
Oh yeah.
So
it wasn't like the best thing ever, nothing, but it was impressive. The most important thing about it was that it was like, let's take that almost metaphorically and about the Me Too generation of that type of thing. And it's very, Elizabeth Moss is great.
Well, that's the thing. It's mostly Elizabeth Moss reacting to things.
Yeah.
One of our best actors or actresses, doesn't matter, actors.
Yeah.
Sure, put her in something and let her react to things.
And then Chloe Zhao is going to be doing that. What was
Dracula
sci-fi?
Yeah.
Really want to see whatever that is because of course we loved Nomadland and I really want to see what that's going to be. So but anyway.
So you probably don't need to have this answer for you, but we'll just say anymore. Why are we doing this movie? We love it.
Yeah,
it's good. You should see it.
Everybody loves it, so it's like, except for certain people.
I wanted to briefly talk about some of these critical responses that we read.
We'll talk about that, and then we'll move on.
Roger Ebert gave it 2 out of 4 stars, which is fair.
No, I thought he gave it 3 out of 4.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
I was thinking
he was saying.
I was thinking of his Clue review he did last week. Clue. Yeah, he gave it 3 out of 4. But he had the whole air of like he
felt bad.
I know this isn't great, but I just had a lot of fun with it, and I just love adventure movies. Sue me. And
he was talking about Anaconda too for a while.
Yeah, he was talking about a lot of real trashy
and Congo
90s movies.
Yeah. Stop eating my sesame cake. We haven't seen that movie, by the way.
No, we've seen that scene a lot of times, but he kind of had this guilty pleasure aspect to it.
Yeah.
That now the New York Times review just outright infuriated me.
That pissed me off too. I don't know. It was. Stephen Holden, I think, wrote that.
It said the whole. He kept saying over and over again, "Oh, it's a parody. It's
not a parody."
Or
as Joe Biden would say, "It's not kidding around here."
Like, it's like no,
it's not a joke. Like it's a real thing. It's sit down. It's real. You should listen. As in Jerry Maguire. But
it's real. You should say something.
Yeah, or that's it. Right. Yeah.
But I was, and so one thing so we can just look at these reviews and say, well, they just didn't quote get it.
Right.
But I was telling you this, one thing that lightly scares me about reading reviews like that is that all the things we say about modern movies are only going to be seen through that lens years later sometimes, I wonder. Because ultimately, poptimism wins the day in the sense of like, oh, if it's big and fun and people had fun with it, so what?
Like the fact that people still talk about Love Story now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, or whatever the hell that is. Yeah, that people are like, oh yeah, that was a big movie, and everybody knows that movie's not good. I haven't seen it, but that's what I've heard. So maybe it is. I don't know, but frankly, Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw, was like no anyway. So yeah. But anyway, we're not gonna.
But it's just one of those things. Like it's just a good reminder to read some of these reviews that. We're a generation of people who grew up with this movie, so we have a distinct idea about it. But even so, there's a lot of people who don't like something, and years later, once the critical consensus starts to change, so too does people's views of things. And so that is very much going to be the case for certain things now today.
The Space Jam is still garbage, because it was.
Like, I really do wonder, though, the kids who especially... Yeah, because, I was raised on Space Jam, and...
I wasn't.
It didn't take me long to figure out as a kid this is stupid, and... garbage, as you said.
Yeah.
But I really do wonder, though, about the generation of kids today. And this, I feel like we've been doing a 3-part complaint about Disney the last 3 episodes in various ways. So let this be the conclusion of sorts to that. We'll get back to it in future episodes.
It won't take long, I'm sure.
I do really wonder, though, about the generation of kids who are raised on these live-action remakes of things.
Yeah.
And, of course, now with Disney Plus, I guess it's interesting that
it's more
that
available
like
for them
those
to see
older
those,
movies on animated are a lot
like Fantasia's on there.
Yeah,
that's how I first saw I feel stupid, but I'd seen Fantasia years ago, but I hadn't seen it in full length in a long time, and I rewatched it, and I was just like, this is just one of the best movies I've ever seen, and that's just freely available for anybody to watch on Disney Plus. I mean, that sounds stupid because it's that way with everything with streaming now, but that kids can see that, and that's not going to be something a lot of kids would care about, frankly, because, but that movie was a massive deal, and still is, really. I mean, you think about how old that movie is, and it's that good. So, yeah, like you're saying, that's all available for them to see, but will they, if they've got these live-action versions of that? Well, live-action Lion King, it's like there's no human beings in it.
Yeah,
so
that's another thing, too, is you quote live-action, but there's so
Yeah.
much CGI, that's a misnomer to call it that.
Yeah.
And again, there is some CGI in this, but this is in '99, so like the early
But it also
2000s
has
was when things
juicy
yeah.
in it. Yes.
So, what do you?
Yeah.
Let's just say this before we really. We're going to watch the VHS intro here in a second. What do you think of just the whole idea of the sand face, just like as a thing?
Well, then there's the water face too.
Well, I was going to
don't know how
say
he
in
can
the
control
sequel, that is the biggest aping of a thing I've ever seen in a movie. It's like, well, the sand face looked cool. Let's do a water face. That's just
my
so,
favorite
like,
moment of it
sequelitis.
is when he's like smiling with his eyes closed, and it's like does that weird move up.
There's something goofy about it, but it's also feels big, And
I think it's both incredibly stupid and incredibly epic in the same moment.
Right.
So epic.
So
But,
that sums up the movie in some way. I mean, the movie. I don't think the movie's that stupid.
No, but it's something.
Now, do you remember your first time seeing this movie? Exactly.
No, because we had the VHS.
Right.
And I mean, this is one of those movies we've talked about it so many times about how there's those movies you saw a million times when you were young, and this was one of those for us, especially me.
It was to an extent, but I actually do.
You
remember seeing this for the first time because I
enough.
remember when this came out in the summer of '99, right?
It was
May.
May
I think it was because
May
I think one of the things said that like this movie needs to make all the money it can before episode 1 comes out.
Because that was another thing we talked about last week is an actual competition between that and a Star Wars movie that would even happen. Now it's like Star Wars wins. Goodbye, whatever other movies are on.
Well, even in '99, that was going to be the highest grossing movie of the year.
Obviously.
And that was a whole event. Right. I remember very well as a kid, all that. But,
in fact, I want to see where this was. Go ahead and talk about it.
Well, I was just going to say, I do distinctly remember when this was coming out, and I was like, this, 99, of course, was one of the great years in film. So a lot of great movies that maybe wouldn't be the top grossing movies. Well,
this was number 6. So the movies there, Phantom Menace, number 1, The Sixth Sense, because that's randomly, I think, technically the highest grossing horror movie of all time, if you want to count that as a horror movie. Toy Story 2, The Matrix, Tarzan, The Mummy, Notting Hill, The World Is Not Enough, American Beauty, and Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. So, yeah.
Think about that. American Beauty grossed more money than Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me. Those are like
just
9
barely,
10.
though, by like $40 million. Just $40 million. That's all.
Yeah. Well, box office terms, that actually is.
But yeah,
closer.
I mean, I forget that Phantom Menace was really close to making $1 billion.
Well, look at the difference between that and The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, that's like $250 million, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I do remember when this movie was coming out, and I was like, ooh, it looks fun, it looks exciting, but being kind of like, ooh, it's kind of a horror movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can handle it. So it wasn't until I saw the VHS. I got the VHS for my birthday in '99, I remember. And ever since, this has been among my favorite movies, over the years.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to do something like we did with the Country Bears VHS, where we watched the intro.
Yeah. Hang on. We got. Guess who?
There's a Marvel ad. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're watching this on YouTube.
We're going to be watching, again, the intro to The Mummy's VHS.
Yeah, and it's the Previews Guy VHS openings. You can just look it up. It's Opening to the Mummy 1999
Which, again,
VHS.
I love to go back and do quite a bit in terms of just rewatch VHS intros.
Yeah.
So
I don't think this is too loud. All right, I'll give everybody a second. Hopefully you're there. If you need to, pause it and get there to watch
again,
this.
Opening to the Mummy 1999 VHS.
Yep, so doing it and pressing that space bar in 3, 2, 1. Now, this is one of the most memorable ones for us, and we talk about it a lot, this intro.
Yeah, this is obviously an advertisement for Universal Studios.
Right.
Islands of Adventure, I believe.
Yeah, Jurassic Park.
And I think by this point I had seen Jurassic Park, and so I was like, oh, Jurassic Park. Wow. I was literally like, as a kid, I was like, oh, wow, they literally have dinosaurs in the park. I remember actually thinking that.
Yeah. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Okay. We got Blu-ray now, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we said this is a really good action movie, too, which we already kind of said, but I was just kind of thinking about it. A lot of good set pieces in it.
Yeah.
So. The DVD.
And full frame.
Yeah. Got to go all the way.
It's to die for. And then...
The Mummy. The Goldsmith.
Very often... Wait, hold on a second. Me and Levi say this all the time to each other. Composed and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith.
Like Decca, yeah. Like anybody needs to know that.
Now, you know how quickly these things are going between them? Now, this here, this is very formative. This was some of the first times I remember seeing the Universal Monsters.
Yeah, it would have been for me, too. Yeah.
And I remember I rented some of those for the first time on VHS from our Hudson Public Library, I remember.
Yeah.
Specifically, I really remember Dracula and Frankenstein, which are still two of my favorites. And it's always interesting that, every studio has its go-to movies that anytime there's a new home video format have to be the ones that come out.
Right.
Now, this is later in VHS's run, obviously, but DVD is obviously becoming a little more prominent by the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I don't know the history of their releases on DVD, but I knew that they would have been among Universal's priorities in terms of things to get out. Same thing with Blu-ray, same thing with 4K.
Yeah. Plus trailers. Now, this is kind of weird. Like I said, that this originally that movie was pretty much totally, obviously, without music. They only had like an opening Swan Lake they used, but So yeah, Philip Glass, who famously did all the Coetzee trilogies. He did them, which he's known musician in his own right, but specifically those movies.
But these are still, when I hear his name, this is one of the first things I think of.
So I've never know. I'd like to because I've never seen it. I think that'd be interesting. But
maybe the next time we watch that.
Yeah.
I love Forever. This is the last time they'll be coming out on home video.
Yeah.
Now, this stuff.
Of course.
Hitchcock.
First time I ever saw Hitchcock.
Yeah, same here.
I never knew that my favorite movie would be one of these movies. So Vertigo. So it's funny. This is kind of the same style of the last one. Topaz is an interesting.
I do
movie.
love too that the organization of all these, the Universal movies, then these, and then what comes next. The intensity level is getting a little higher each time. And so I remember even as a kid being like, "Oh, these movies look kind of intense."
Yeah.
Like. Not being aware of what they were.
I always remember this music. It was funny. I think the only of these movies I haven't seen now is Frenzy. I've seen half of, but yeah, and I got the DVD set. They basically put this same set out multiple times on VHS, DVD, Blu-ray.
They've even put out some 4Ks now too.
Yeah.
Some of them, the
bigger movies. Yeah.
We used to laugh.
Well, not technically, but yeah.
You know what's interesting?
You haven't seen that Man Who Knew Too Much remake, have you?
No,
It's all right.
Interesting is that for so many people in the 40s and 50s, Hitchcock's face was, everybody knew what he looked like, and it's interesting that even our introductions to him traded in on that imagery of him. You know,
now these movies,
Cape Fear,
yeah.
Now again, as a kid, I was like, these movies look real. I was like, these are intense and too scary for me. I remember thinking.
All-time moment here coming up.
Now, of course, we know that's what's her name from Twin Peaks?
What was that? Michael
Nadine?
Murphy? Yeah, Nadine. Yeah. Is that Michael Murphy in there though somewhere?
I
look kind of like
maybe.
him, but I don't know. Fear, not the band who you heard last week.
Yeah.
Sea of Love isn't exactly these
It's
types
like, I guess
of movies.
a thriller, but we quote from this a lot too. So.
Yeah. This is just a window inside our minds. So.
And then this is a divergence of sorts.
Yeah.
Dragonheart, A New Beginning.
Yeah.
I've not seen the first Dragonheart, so I can't really attest to whether
Isn't
or not this is
that
that much of a
one
new
of those
beginning
brothers in Malcolm in the Middle?
Yeah, he's the oldest brother.
Yeah. So lame.
I said his name was Jock.
Joff, I think.
Oh.
I don't know.
No, this is a random thing to say. I've always been weirded out by things where dragons are sentient beings and characters, other than just being a creature.
It's like an added weirdness.
Yeah.
It's a dragon.
Let your spirits fly.
Let your freak flag fly.
It really was. How weird it looked.
Weird, yeah. That's real. Whoa.
And it's not, oh wow, that's why they haven't really showed it all that much.
Yeah. What even is this? Like,
the PETA of its day. It was like worried about the dragon, endangerment.
I'm staying right here. I like it here.
Those Dragonheart movies looks like they're trying to be Free Willy, but dragon instead of about a killer whale.
This. I will have that heart tonight.
What is so big about the dragon's heart? Is it like a energy resource?
Yeah, it has
like fuel,
some power or something. I guess I don't know. That it? Okay.
I guess so. So yeah,
there you go.
Little trip down memory lane for us. We watch it very often and quote from it very often. But
wait, there's a Mummy Returns VHS open. I don't remember that one as much. But
did we have a VHS of that?
Yeah, we did, but we didn't watch.
We
just didn't watch it as much. But
all right, so we'll take a brief break, and when we get back, you'll be hearing us walk through, talk through, fall through, be mummified through,
horrify you,
immune through. 1999's The Mummy.
Where did you get this?
On a dig down in Thebes.
Jonathan, I think you found something.
There is an ancient legend of a place known as the City of the Dead.
We call it the doorway to hell.
Where the earliest pharaohs were said to have hidden the wealth of Egypt.
Are we going into battle?
There's something out there. Something underneath that sand.
They came to uncover its secrets.
Mummies, my good son. This is where they made the mummies.
They sought to unlock its treasure.
And then there was light.
Oh, boy.
What they did.
Oh, my God. It does exist.
I think this may be the Book of the Dead.
Was unleash a force unlike any the world has ever known.
You must not read from the book! What the hell was that?
You have unleashed the creature that we have feared for more than 3,000 years.
Whoa!
He will regenerate and no longer be the undead.
We are in serious trouble.
Can you swim?
if the occasion calls for it.
Trust me, it calls for it.
Universal Pictures invites you.
His powers are growing. What? This just keeps getting better and better.
To experience the adventure.
It appears he's already chosen his human sacrifice.
That will live forever.
If he turns me into a mummy, you're the first one I'm coming after.
Go!
The Mummy.
And here we are. We're back. So, a good little trailer, I'd say.
Yeah,
one of the better trailers we've seen in a while.
Yeah.
So, Levi, why is The Mummy rated PG-13?
For pervasive adventure violence and some partial nudity.
Partial nudity. Okay. Tasteful.
Probably early on in the movie.
Yeah. So we're watching this off of the standard issue Universal Blu-ray.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they put this out on 4K yet. I don't think so.
Not that I'm aware.
I don't think so. But all right, we're hitting play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We promise you yet again, we are not in the pocket of Universal.
Universal
Pictures.
just makes a lot of good movies.
We'd like if they sent us one check,
and we will not promote them.
No,
because we don't do that. Well, we already have been, but not.
But other than that,
yeah.
UniversalStudios.com. Haven't been there in a while.
like you've ever been there.
They manipulated the logo to be something. You know, when a movie starts off with logo manipulation, you're in for a wild ride. Wicked good fun indeed.
Yeah.
This is an impressive shot to start the movie in terms of the grandeur, the pageantry, romance.
These sounds are just embedded in my very soul. Like the dog barking,
Good effects. They look like they hold up pretty good.
Our mom is also very much interested in Egyptian stuff.
Yeah.
That's one of many interests that we share. She's just really also into a lot of ancient history stuff that I've been getting more interested in more recently than I used to be. So I've always been interested in this stuff, but like
one thing that I always kind of forget about this is that Imhotep's supposed to be a priest, and just because he just doesn't act very priestly to me. Maybe that's the problem, I guess. But
but that guy's not a statue.
Yeah.
You know something random that
it's like he'd be a thug in the Schumacher Batman movies.
Ebert mentioned, he's like, I love the Goldfinger type paint or body paint or whatever. It's just like, okay, like
that must have been something Ebert was into in the bedroom. I don't know.
They're willing to risk life itself. He's gonna mess up the paint. The big man on campus.
Hat,
what was it you were going to say about this?
Okay, you got it out here in a second. Obviously, he's speaking ancient Egyptian here.
Yeah.
And Imhotep is his priest, but, they obviously implies they're friends or close.
Yeah.
And what he says when he finds a Nox on the moon here with him is...
Imhotep, my priest.
But the way he's saying the ancient Egyptian, it sounds like he says, my son.
Yeah.
Like he's like his son, and he's betraying him, which adds to it.
Yeah. He obviously didn't say that.
Yeah, he didn't, but it just sounds phonetically kind of like it.
I love how this moment kind of gets motifed later in the movie too, like that silhouette. Magi.
So Magi were all up to it back then, even.
These guys.
I do love that her faith is, I'm going to die, but you will resurrect me. So, yeah. But don't forget, obviously kind of the MacGuffin of this movie is the Book of the Dead.
Yeah.
Which brings life.
But the Book of the Living brings death.
And the sequel. The squeakle.
This is a really good, speedy prologue, I think.
Yeah.
This whip.
Love that's just they just kind of broke into the crypt and stole the body. It's like, wait, what? Like, it's like how Batman Forever technically begins with the Two-Face escape from Arkham, which was actually a big set piece. It was supposed to open that movie, but
oh well.
But it might be in the Schumacher cut that could be coming out. Who knows? Anyways,
is that even a real thing?
Apparently, it is.
Oh, it is. Oh. I'd actually like to see that. Not that it'll.
We'll save
change
those conversations for another day.
Yeah. Well, we talked about Snyder Cut last week, so screw y'all, you fools.
Like, release the Sommer's cut of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there is a director's cut, but would it be like more Jonathan? Again, it could be more Jonathan and Beni scenes or something.
Could be.
You know,
they only have a few scenes where they're directly talking to each other.
And you can tell they both just don't think much of the other one.
No, they're just.
But that's why we need the spinoffs to delve into their bromance.
Her resurrection reaction here,
and possible romance. Let me just say, who's to say Jonathan and Beni can't love each other?
Oh, they tracked him.
So the ritual is like, so was he going to kill her again? I know
this
always scared me as a kid.
What? This is weird.
Yeah. So, would you care to be mummified when as you're about to die? Maybe, that's a way to go out, I guess, right? Because you're tortured, basically. Awful.
It's a pretty gruesome opening.
Yeah.
That guy's got a gut on him.
Yeah, said this was so horrible that they never bestowed it upon anybody before.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was. I just love at this point he's still wiggling like, it's gonna mean anything.
Just stop. Like,
there's the worst part of it.
Yeah,
is what makes you juicy.
Skittering.
Hey, I remember as a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. I had a necklace for a while I bought at the
there's a Magi symbol.
Magi symbol there, yeah. From the ride. Universal. But as you said, very quick, very brisk, a great transition to here. Again, the visual shorthand of this movie is very well done.
So I have something I want to remark upon about, obviously it's going to say Hamunaptra 1923, something about these Legionnaires in the movie that, the two main characters of them are American and Hungarian. We never see any of the French people, really. They're just kind of there.
Right.
I just think that's kind of weird, but...
That's true, yeah. But French Foreign Legion, I'd say this is the second best movie relating to the French Foreign Legion in 1999, after Beautrevel, of course.
The Claire Denis film, yeah.
Now, see, this movie should have ended with Beni's Rhythm of the Night, trapped in,
and have, the Beatles crawling on him, and he's doing it, the Rhythm of the Night. Yeah. That movie. Good movie, but great ending.
Again, here's our first, immunized
Hall of Famer. Something when I was little, I always thought he said he just got promoted,
he did, or he
that
did.
guy that ran away.
Yeah.
And it's like, he got promoted and now he gave up.
Yeah. That's what he is saying though, right?
No, he's saying that Rick got promoted because he left, so he's the new
Oh, he said you just got promoted?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
what I always thought too. But,
Okay.
yeah. But no, saying you're the next in command because he left. So
now there's a lot of this is set in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of movies in the 20s and 30s that kind of deal in this kind of Orientalist adventure fare, especially in the Middle East. You could say Bengal Lancer movie with Gary Cooper is a version of this. Gunga Din, which we actually haven't seen. I know we've been wanting to for a long time. Cary Grant is a version of this. So this brand and this location and geography of adventure movies were big in the 30s and 40s especially as well. This is right around the time that Britain and some of France and some of the traditional European colonial powers were starting to either give more autonomy, or some of these groups were gaining more autonomy for themselves. But in these
all-time moment.
And we always say it's not like he's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, how fast he can count before he dies. He knows he's going to die. So.
Right.
And one thing I always remember as a kid that I loved about Rick is just how many guns he had.
Yeah, he has and
then he's got the gun bell and just he just knows all the cheat codes.
Yeah.
One thing I always thought was cool too as a kid is, my dad's named Rick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, actual name's Richard, but I don't know if he's
Richard.
Richard
The actual
O'Connell.
name's Ricky, technically.
Well, technically, it's actually Richard. His our grandmother, his mom, when they asked him what wanted his name to be, she said Ricky and wanted the name to be Ricky.
But they
assumed, she means Richard, and put Richard on his birth certificate and all of his official documents.
Yeah.
So that's the story of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, the era of Ricky Ricardo.
Yeah.
Imhotep, you have some explaining to do. Well, Lucy goes to Hamunaptra. The lost episodes.
She can be a communist out there. Or
we haven't really seen those Road to Blank movies either, with those Crosby Hope movies.
Yeah.
I'd like to see those.
Those kept getting compared to this kept getting compared to that, and I was like, I don't see what the comparison is, but I haven't seen those.
Again, that's what the Beni Jonathan movies could have been,
You will die.
That's not ominous at all. You will die.
And then those sounds.
I mean, a version, proto, You Know Nothing of Hell,
from
Pirates of the Caribbean. The Curse of the Black Pearl. Just all these people wiped out, dead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I guess this mission failed. So their first meeting, and they don't even know it until
3 years later.
Yeah.
This.
The desert will kill him.
Yeah, I was like, no, it doesn't, but okay.
So this is in 26, because that was 23 earlier, right? Yeah. 1926, the year before sound cinema took off. The jazz singer. But the era of Calvin Coolidge, in America.
One of the most pathetic excuses for a president.
Obviously, as book lovers, love libraries. I remember as a kid, this always felt, it's so cool. It would be a great place to see, visit. And then she does what she does to it, but, Do you find the whole woman librarian aesthetic attractive as a guy? That whole, that's a thing that some people
I don't know
are into. Kind of like was it Velma from Scooby Doo's kind of a version of that, but
I guess I don't know. I mean, It's an interesting question, but
Doesn't the second movie literally repeat this gag too? By the way, of just
with
the fallen
those pillars or whatever.
The pillars,
with the sun. What an annoying character that sun.
Yeah, that's not a good addition. But it seems natural, I guess, is what people would do. Or the producers.
Yeah.
Oh, let's just throw a kid in there. Kids like kids. Like kids also like movies that didn't have kids in it, you know. But
I prefer that.
Great meltdown. It's like, need to look into that, but destroying a place.
It's like Ramses destroyed all of Syria. She destroyed one library, which admittedly had a lot of stuff in it, but like they probably burned a lot of libraries there. I don't know, like you know.
That's such a randomly good, subtle moment. Allah rest their souls, and there's like, and I remember as a kid, I was like, what? Like, what does that mean exactly? You know, it's not going to be condescending to him. So, oh, God rest him. You know, it's being faithful to that culture. Egypt, obviously, Islamic. This is one of those things that the first time I saw this was a big jump scare to me.
It's kind of scary.
Good intro for Jonathan. Any big Jonathan takes to unveil?
Well, we kind of said earlier he's great. I mean, I don't know.
Great comic relief. And he's also, what I love about him is he's just kind of this ne'er-do-well playboy, just kind of hanging out, not really doing anything with his life, and so gets wrapped up in all this.
Somebody had talked about Abdul Muhammad Bob. Like, I never noticed that before. But in one of those reviews, they talk about that. This sound.
Yeah. That hair.
How is he under there?
Yeah.
You know?
That hair, though.
What a SOB, though, that he did that with that body, you know? Like. A bit.
You're going to help me, clean that up, kind of, sort of.
No, that's right. I forgot that that's kind of a random thing with her. She don't have enough experience to be in this like scholarly group or whatever.
Bembridge
but
scholars,
but by the end,
take that, Bembridge scholars.
Yeah. That's what's funny about. They just kind of walk around and I'll go to that dig down in Thieves and hang out, like that's what people did back then. There,
well, obviously, it doesn't say much about their background, but it says that her parents were patrons,
right.
So they had money.
They had to be big explorers too, yeah.
So they come from privilege,
right.
British privilege.
Like total greedy SOB. It took me a long time to notice that he's purposely burning it here in a minute.
Yeah.
Because he's not wanting them to find it because he's also a magi. But.
Hamunaptra, I guess it's like this mystical city, almost like Atlantis in terms of, it could have existed.
Yeah, watch him.
It's for the best, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, he's devastated. So he clearly is something's weird with him. I never really thought about that before because he's obviously this kind of historical curator. Of course, he would care about this being preserved unless there was some weird thing.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Cairo prison.
Yeah. Also, actually, he got this originally from O'Connell. Had it, I guess.
He was just looking for a good time.
Yeah. Did he just say, I asked him?
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I mean, he looks like George of the Jungle.
I'm sure that prison's a joy to live in.
Again, he's it's like he's more in his George of the Jungle phase, with his long hair, and not been a kind 3 years to old Rick.
Him screaming.
Yeah.
Look, there's guards on
there.
there
They're
paying
just talking.
attention.
Yeah, like. Do I know you?
I've just got one of those faces.
City of the Dead. That's a game we like to play.
Yeah.
Then get me the hell out of here. Like when you're in an exam for over 3 hours.
Talking to the administrator.
Yeah.
And the testing coordinator is
going to be hanged.
Yeah.
He had a very good time.
That's his go-to phrase. Is people having good times. Yeah. He should have been in good times.
I love she just barely gets him off here.
Yeah.
You know.
So hateful.
We say that all the time too, you know. It's like when you're
get him. It's similar from
It's like when you're taking somebody's food order, you're gonna call something in. You're like, any last request, pig?
It's like they were all looking at that.
Like, his neck did not break. And then it's like a riot is gonna happen. Like. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we're just gonna quote this movie all the time. So. His face here in a second, where he's like, like "You're lying."
He went down on his number. That's more than fair.
Yeah.
Well, way more than
fair.
fair.
It's like, you know,
fourth
of
which there's going to be 4
everything.
people going at first. So
him and boats, you know.
Yeah.
Thinks everything's so dirty and like.
He doesn't have a good naval history.
No.
Where you got that suit from?
You remember that moment in Looney Tunes Back in Action where he's like, sorry, Batman, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Batman,
Yeah.
I forgot about that until just now. By the way, that moment where he's like, I'd never steal from a partner. I always thought that he was saying, oh, I should give you some money for what happened. But I just now realize he's not making sure he didn't steal anything.
Pickpocketing, yeah.
Obviously, that's finally clicked for me, like, you know. But was sand, blood. Later in the movie, blood.
It's a good. That's one of Fraser's go-to words.
Which supposedly Errol Flynn was an inspiration for this character, sort of. But at the end of later in the movie, he's like, "What's your favorite Errol Flynn movie?" He's like, "Captain Blood." He didn't say that.
Yeah. Hypothetically,
he's going with him to protect my investment.
Thank you very much.
It's me when I order Blu-rays from Criterion and I'm calling them up, or like go out to LA to the closet and they're like, "What's going on?" I'm here to protect my investment. Thank you very much.
Those guys like
he's gigging or something with a knife blade. Yeah. Cut the dick, Burns. This guy, how quick he's talking. This cracking sound.
Yeah.
I love this Beni re-emergence. He's like,
yeah. Benny, that's the thing. Benny's always lurking.
He reminds
Lamborghini lurking.
He reminds us of somebody we know personally. But yeah, good old friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look at my guns.
Yeah.
Something buried underneath that sand. What is that? Like a brain sucker or something?
My favorite of Amon-Ra's work.
It's like Das Kapital or something. Yeah. What? And I love the slowness with which he kind of walks over there. And he knew who it was, too, by the sound. I think I'll kill you.
Beni Jr.
That's when you have like a choice in a video game of whether you kill somebody or not, and you're like, I think I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Like when you're going to kill Darko Brevic or not. Darko Brevic.
Love the flagrancy of literally just throwing him off the boat.
Goodbye, Beni.
It's like he's really at the point where it's like, you are worth nothing to me.
And him
He's
screaming
like,
back here. By the way, I love that them people snuck on the boat in the 2 seconds that he wasn't looking.
You gotta wonder, they're like, well, they must have some history, and then just kept going.
Right, yeah.
Like, whatever's going on with them, like. When the Civil War started, according to Quentin Tarantino, in 1860,
and when it ended,
yeah, really.
How are these people? They're like Sneak King of their generation.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, how do they do all this? You know,
The original Sneak Kings.
Yeah.
The Magi.
Where is the map? This guy's, wow. Like, this other guy that pops up.
Literally, a candle to the eye.
All-time piano exit
Yeah.
here. Love this music swell in the middle of all this.
So he's like ready to fight, but then he's on fire.
And then he has that knife. Yeah. Total madness and chaos. It's like an Assassin's Creed game where you can throw those like what do you call that? Like a torch around.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, it's a boat from Sudan. That's it.
Yeah. I guess the SS Sudan. I don't know.
State ship Sudan. Her Majesty's ship Sudan.
Yeah. HMS Sudan. Yelling.
By the way, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but this moment here where he headbutts him, I was like, you know, obviously a big fan of this movie when we were younger, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna headbutt something like him, and I headbutted a wall, and I hurt myself.
And you've been living with the after effects ever since?
Yeah, pretty much. But have I ever told you that before? I was like, yeah, it was down at our great aunt and uncle's old house.
You know what? That's where I assumed before you even said anything where it would have been. You didn't need to say that, but that's where I assumed.
Yeah, but I did that one time. It hurt real bad. You remember there were like white wall that was real thin feeling and you could like push against it. So it didn't hurt that bad, but like, yeah. I mean, that was the British when we elected a certain president.
Yeah.
But then us when they elected then when their newer prime minister was elected. So. But we're like, well, it would be hilarious if he blew up and died in that moment.
Yeah.
I mean, a historic moment right here coming up. Okay.
You know what? You know what the truth is? They're all kind of messed up. Every country, that is. Yeah. The U.S., Egypt, Sudan, all of them.
Swearing in Hungarian.
I just love the whole idea that they're the only two guys that really know where this is, and that Beni just being Beni is always perpetually behind her. Yeah. Probably a sexual harassment situation.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It's like a dirtbag. Like.
To, like, you know, a lot of Islamic women there. Like,
Yeah.
you know. He's like, oh, money. Like. It's a real, like, when in Rome moment. It's like, okay, like, why? But
I'm starting to...
Yeah.
Well, you say what you're going to say.
Like, they're getting to know each other. Like,
they might have something going on.
Yeah. We're both basically saying it, though. We could have just stopped and been like, you know. Like,
you already know.
Oh, well.
Classic The Mummy vibes here.
Yeah.
When you think Mummy 99...
This is a moment you think of.
One of many moments.
I love they're going, and then that guy, what's his name, going on with him there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, whatever. Like.
Spoiler alert, he doesn't make it through the whole movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if he makes it through halfway through the movie.
We'll see. This was all filmed in Morocco, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it said online.
I wonder why that is, why they didn't just film in Egypt.
I don't know.
Egypt might be a lot more protective over that because of the sites and the land. Yeah. They might not really like that people would film there. Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. Might be.
I've always wanted to go to Egypt a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they ever will or not. I don't know.
Like we're being watched. Mm-hmm. See, this shot's just he begging them two and Beni. They were just the trio that never were. You know what could have been.
You know what the funny? We basically said the funniest thing is that two of those three characters are dead by the end of the movie. So it's like, well, you know.
Oh, yeah, well, you know, movies, Hollywood, they'll find a way.
Okay. Well, that stupid British guy has that umbrella.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
This doesn't make exact sense to me. It's like they get shown a special way by the sun.
Yeah,
it's like, what?
well,
that doesn't exist anyways?
Yeah.
Like,
Hamunaptra.
Here we go
again.
So, like, that just didn't exist?
Yeah.
If you just would have went forward? I don't know. But the race is on.
Yeah.
We need us NASCAR announcers to, like, you know, commentate this. Oh, we're going too wide, too wide!
Yeah.
Like.
And, you know, the funny thing is that, like, everybody but two character, well, really, like, one... Well, Rick's just kind of going because, well, whatever, I guess I'll go. Yeah, there'll be some money there, I guess. The only one who's going, I don't really care about money, is Evelyn. Is just going because, well, I want to see what's there. Well, everybody else is like, oh, money.
She actually has academic interest in it. The rest is, oh, we're going to find something and sell it there.
Yeah.
Sell it, buy it, sell it.
Buy, sell, barter, whatever.
Barter. Trade in for some old SNES.
Jonathan here.
So the whole joke is, oh, like, they got camels, they can't keep up. I was like, well, they won, so. You know what? Maybe the other characters should have been the leads of the movie, then they would have won.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, if only they could have done that, maybe they would have got there in time. It was like man shouting in Arabic, like I would assume, like the whole movie almost, like, but like, get out of the way, like he's kind of doing it on purpose, but like move, like.
No, you have me on the other end of the rope.
Like he wants to be right on top of him in case any money at all is found.
No,
what does a woman know? And he'll be like, I don't know what that is, like. What are you looking at? He's like, oh, what are you looking at?
Again, I think something's going to blossom between them, if you ask me.
The warden.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting he literally is a prison warden. Like,
like it's that one man, not like this 1,000-year-old like
tomb
sarcophagus, basically. Yeah.
I don't know. He
probably does stink. Don't get me wrong. He can't stink that much worse than that room had to stink.
For entering the afterlife. Oh. Mummies aren't made; they're born.
You can't just be made a mummy. Like, you have to be born a mummy. Mummies.
Did he say bugs? I hate bugs. Did Evelyn say all that? It's the way the subtitles are like, yeah.
Well, spoiler alert, you're going to hate him even more in a little bit.
Well,
it'll be the last thing you think about.
It's going to be the last thing that goes through his mind.
Literally. It's going to eat away at him.
Oh. Jonathan's gun.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's Catwoman in that one scene of Batman Returns with that like type Derringer type gun. No, I don't think so. Friend.
I mean, probably has.
Yeah. He seems like somebody that gets in a lot of situations he shouldn't be in, so yeah. Mm-hmm. Love the warden over there.
Yeah, he's like, I'm willing to die, like, for all this.
I mean, he's straight up kind of low key insane. So you know.
I love that he's like, oh, are you gonna be insulted if I talk bad about the Americans?
He got lost.
Or smelly little friend.
Meanwhile, he's just totally lost.
Yeah.
Like, why? Why did you go off on your own, idiot? Like,
he clearly knows nothing about any of this.
Yeah. Blue gold. Clearly not. My divine price. The moment. All time. Ululating moment. Love it. Ululate is a verb, like.
Let them die.
Sieda. This last one. Look on this guy's face. Like, wow. I'm dead. Like that screaming sound.
Could have easily killed them.
Right. Written and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith. Ooh. This is still going on. Mm-hmm. Oh, Allah. Yeah, Allah won't save you now.
Yeah.
One more. Like, wow.
Allah's probably had it out for him for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure. Allah isn't very happy with him, I'm sure, yeah.
This is a kid always really just...
Yeah.
It was just so disgusting and
it
vile
still
to me.
is, really. Random thing to remark upon right now, but his outfit here always remind me of like some gangster from the 20s or 30s, that like stripes.
Yeah.
Well,
it was real. It was fun, and it was real fun. Pre-Voldemort.
Warden screaming.
We never really gave him a name.
Yeah, well,
Warden.
yeah. Notice his shirt's buttoned here when he hits the wall.
Listen, he wanted to go out looking stylish.
He like did it real quick. He like quickly buttoned it. Like. Does that alarm down here?
Getting all scary.
Oh, that's here in a little bit when he says that, yeah. This is what he believed in. Blow it away with a shotgun, whatever it is. Meanwhile, I love it's like, well, we need an action scene.
Yeah, this just seems kind of useless.
Yeah.
Well, that lives are lost on both sides here, and then there's kind of, well, whatever. But none of the main American guys, just to throw away, basically
Egyptians or
Egyptian
Arabs.
laborers they hired. Great run for Jonathan.
All-time
here.
moment here too. This look. All-time spit take. That guy, hero to the end.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I will blow us all up.
Yeah. This is our first chance to see Ardith Bay in action.
Yeah.
I think he was a playable character on the Game Boy Color game. I remember.
Really?
Yeah.
That even had playable characters?
Yeah, different things. Because sometimes you were like Jonathan.
Oh, man.
Sometimes you were Evie. Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that.
I don't think, unfortunately, Beni was playable. They knew that only one man could truly control Kevin J. O'Connor, and that was him. And they didn't want to just disrespect his,
I mean,
presence.
He's immune.
Yeah. They're closer than they've ever been before.
Gotta be under this sand.
Well, he's one of the guys that can't have any internal monologue. Just say everything out loud.
Sucking them dry, that's how.
I love they were like, leave this place or die. You have one day.
And then they're like,
nah, we're good. We're going to stick around.
By the way, if anybody ever tells you, you mustn't go there or leave, get out, do it.
Yeah. Yes, there we go. This is a big moment, I'm sure, for library science majors. fade to black. You know? But the sun also rises, as we know.
That moment was a real lot. What's your favorite George Michael thing? Wham, wham.
R.I.P. But the Wham, I guess, and George Michael. I don't know.
And,
Wham
and
still
him.
might be a.
I don't think so.
Around.
I think it was just him and that other guy. So.
Yeah, were.
Wham, were?
Yeah. Ram were wigwam.
Alleghenian. The Allegheny Mountains?
I don't think so.
Ooh.
No, you can't blame them. Even Benny's like, we gotta go. Ascension is they kind of, they technically awaken Emotep, but then the other group kind of finds the body of Emotep,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, because technically it's only these 4 guys who are bound to a curse, technically.
Yeah.
Because he's going to peace out. Even Benny's smart enough to be like, no. I don't care. Hissing. Of his skull is literally like.
Yeah. He's really well preserved to be that old.
Yeah. That's what's weird about mummification is that, the mummies that we've found, and they're clearly very old and dead, but they're not like skeletons. They're still skin and it worked. So,
yeah,
for the most part. This, gentlemen, this is treasure. No, we'll take the organs instead.
Yeah.
That still would be worth a lot.
As if the book wouldn't be worth a lot of money in themselves.
What would a woman know? Dummy.
Yeah.
It's like, get up. You are alive when they start to eat you.
A callback to our very first episode. Jurassic Park. I hate when the home die comes to pass, you know?
Yeah.
Like when someone yells at me, I sentence you to the home die, I know it's going to be a rough going.
Yeah, like... What a
Just
boob.
chilling, you know?
Yeah, like chilling with your organ box and your little organ vase and
the book of the
book
dead.
of the dead on a beach somewhere. That's called stealing, you know. Even though he stole that one guy's stuff.
He stole his whole life,
Yeah.
but you know. Don't worry, that'll be in the sequel, though.
Yeah. Well, it's in the end of this movie, too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, really. Heaven's water out here. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Beni sleeping.
Yeah. See, they're
connected.
after each other's own heart.
Mm-hmm. Hey, they're both doing the thing everybody has to do, like.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the rare instances where knowing ancient Egyptian is a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know.
And that he knew one thing over her of like, no, don't do that. Huh?
Ready to go out blasting. Some of that blueberry yum yum coming to get them.
Yeah. How many there are here that.
Yeah.
What have we done? Moment.
Well, let's just kill more of these.
Yeah.
Nobodies.
But he lives.
Mm-hmm. It's a good look for him, honestly, I think. Yeah.
I ain't waiting around to find out.
So let's run into the, you know.
And Beni just steps right on this.
Temple that has no end.
That was a real Peter Lorre moment there. Leave me. Or Ren or moment. Leave me, Stimpy. Stimpy. The mommy's going to put the coleslaw on the boots, Stimpy. Anyway.
Anyways. How one does, you know. So it sucks to be him.
Yeah.
Hope we don't go smell blind, too. As two glasswares, that'd be really tough.
Yeah.
Scary. And hunted by a mummy. And
But then you see it right up close.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
he had to do it to him.
more poor Egyptians here are gonna get it. Like,
good scapegoat.
Whoops. Or maybe that's later when those guys that happens. I think, yeah. this scene pitches itself very quickly between the terror and the comedy of certain things.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't take his nose though. Like I said, didn't go. He didn't make him smell blind.
As a kid, I know this initial version of Imhotep was pretty disturbing, but I really like how disturbing to it looks when you get some of the skin partially and then not other parts of it.
This was the moment I was thinking of. Another poor fella.
Yeah. Rick thought about going back to help him, but was like, no.
Wow. You ever hear about like flesh-eating amoeba in the waters and stuff? And it's like, like tasty. Like,
those are my favorite Rick moments coming up here.
Yeah. Well, I can do that too.
Mm-hmm. He was all masked up too, at least ahead of his time.
You know what was stupid is that there would be students at school that I would watch them take their mask off to talk, and it's like, that's the point of why you're wearing it, you idiot.
There's a lot of people
that mask
adults,
on.
Plenty of adults.
Oh no, I know it's not just them, but I just noticed that there a lot where they would like do it to talk. It's like
the whole point is you keep it up, I love that they really thought they took his eyes out.
Well, it's of course because they're racist. They think, oh, they did their hoodoo, whatever. It's like, no, like. You would never eat. Basically, the Terminator.
He's like the T-1000 BC, I guess.
Yeah, very good. Beni. All-time moment coming up where he's going through his different faith-based necklaces and some of the things he says. Plus, that just shows he's a total coward. Like,
and
carries that around all the time.
No real beliefs.
And that he's just like, I'll whatever. Like, he wears a coexist sticker on his bumper sticker, probably. That.
No. I said that in a second. No.
Yeah. This. This next one's my favorite one.
Yeah.
I love it said speaking gibberish. It's
like,
like,
that is some language.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
so,
what.
But whatever. I don't know. That's the one thing that saved him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he just had that on him, probably pulled it out of his crack
Yeah.
somewhere. It's like, here's all my stuff.
Imhotep crack.
Yeah.
I guess those were the eyes. Because you can see he's got eyes.
No, he took his eyes from him.
Oh, duh.
But those
Never
are his
mind.
other organs, though.
Duh.
They didn't take his eyes out earlier.
Yeah.
Although, I'm not really sure how you could take certain organs out and then keep someone alive that long to mummify them, but...
They were experts at it, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Never thought
taking
about
it
that.
out just enough to make them keep living, but
yeah, they wouldn't take everything, I guess. But we. This is a funny scene where they keep putting stuff in, and she keeps taking it out. Didn't I tell you? I. We say that all the time. Like, me, I. All-time hand squeeze. Yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Contract terminated.
And try to save the world. Like, you're going to die doing your vibing. Private vibe.
Real, like, tunes here.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a special kind of drunk.
She's like, man, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Tails set firmly between your legs, I see. Yeah, you can talk. You don't have some sacred walking corpse after you.
I wonder what would happen if they would have gotten away. It's like, Mummy comes to America,
yeah.
I guess. Mummy goes down Broadway. Like,
please. I always thought this was creepy. This like mask he's wearing and all that was weird. Please forgive me. Whoops. Like, oh, you will die. But would the alcohol have been turned to blood?
I guess so.
Blood.
Like, even the new Coke in the area would have been.
Yeah.
The Diet Pepsi turned to blood.
I love that Jonathan's always quoting Exodus, and he's the guy that has to say everything. Like, we've got problems. I remember one time there was something wrong with my Jeep, and I didn't even know about it, and our dad came in. I was like, hey, how are you? And he just kind of laughed, and he's like, we've got problems. And it reminded me of that. I don't know if I ever told you about that.
No, I don't.
Yeah. I don't think he was referencing this either, but like, not sure though. Stinkweed.
Emotep roaring.
Memotep's memes roaring like. Well, I don't think he's going to be around for the sequel.
No, the squeakle, nonetheless.
The squeakle.
Gets his second layer.
His second heaven. Or seventh, whatever. Didn't Rick Baker do some of these special effects, by the way? I don't think we ever
Not sure who
that.
did the...
Not the CG, but some of the regular effects.
Not have.
I thought he did something.
Said Nick Dudman, makeup effects supervisor, produced the physical creature effects in the film. Rick Baker in '99 might have been occupied with Wild Wild West of all projects, maybe.
Oh, I think what I'm thinking of is there's like a little documentary on the DVD. He was probably just talking about how much he liked the original Mummy, I think is what it was, maybe.
Okay.
Now I think about it.
No, I actually didn't do Wild Wild West either. Actually, he did Men in Black. I assumed he might have because of Barry Sonnenfeld, but did Mighty Joe Young in '98, Wife in '99.
Meanwhile, he's, hanging out.
Oh, he was a special effects makeup in Wild Wild West, actually. So
wait,
Rick Baker.
This look they give.
I can't get off Wild Wild West. Have you seen all of Wild Wild West?
Yeah,
but you act like that's not a great movie or something. I don't know. No comment? Or?
No.
It is indeed not a great movie. Another big 99er, So there haven't been a lot of things leading me to believe Jonathan knows the Bible that well, but
By the way, I have a question. I don't know a whole lot about the moon, but if the moon caused an eclipse very suddenly like that, usually it lines up and it makes sense. But if the moon just moved over there, would that not cause some massive problems or something?
Yeah.
I just kind of thought about that.
I don't know, but probably
worldwide. Yeah, and then where is he at?
He's on the Hudson Main Street,
that the alleyway back behind there. That's where he is. The place where secret things go down.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right near the police station, so there's nothing that could really happen there. But
unless they're in on it.
This is probably the best scene in the movie, by the way. Literally an all-time moment here. Love the paper gets stuck kind of there.
I mean, when the Academy wises up to giving Kevin J. O'Connor an honorary Academy Award, this scene will likely play.
Well, he's already been regarded by us, so that's all that matters.
Yeah.
The moment. He already told us.
It's a high quality screen.
Yeah. Well, that's all that guy was worth.
No. He got thrown out of
yeah,
like a story building at least. Like he's just kind of well, whatever. I'm going to win.
Meanwhile,
Wow,
he got it bad. This is some creepy looking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
TIA.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Africa, so.
Yeah.
It's a moment that's never made sense to me. This is Africa, not that, but. Well, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense either, but. We'd say that all the time too. And we're not drinkers, which makes it even funnier.
Yeah.
Like, give me a glass of bourbon, like, and a shot of bourbon, and a bourbon chaser.
Yeah, I'll get you down.
This guy, all-time death rattle face, like.
Not all time.
Yeah. This movie kind of is an all-timer, you know. The gun click sound when he lets the hammer up. You know what's weird is it looks like his body is way more like degenerated than it looks when that shows it.
Yeah.
These are just the things I think about.
Juicy.
Look at this though. Kyle attempted to do that face. A pretty good attempt. I mean, you can only really do it if you were totally dead. So, you know. Like.
So whenever that happens to me, the one time it'll happen, I'll try my best to replicate that. It'll be the last thing I try to do, you know.
And then, well, that's it. Because it won't matter if your jaw becomes unattached because you won't be alive, you know.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Okay.
It's like when that guy can't get that one girl out of his head. Cool.
It's like, you idiot. Like. Meanwhile,
you boy chick.
They see me rolling.
See me rolling to the Museum of Antiquities. They hate it. Oh, this one guy still hanging around.
I mean, he don't have anywhere else to go, so. Well, he was the least annoying of the group, so.
Yeah, it has a great piano exit.
See that in a little bit. I remember in one of the reviews, probably that New York Times review that just kind of sucked.
Yeah.
Like, well, they talked about how stupid this was. Like, oh, these people, zombies. It's just like, what's that dumb about it? I don't know, but whatever. Well, it's like what Smashing Pumpkins said: the beginning is the end is the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
A lot of brilliance in that, you know.
The world has crashed through you. And I like them, so I'm
Love is suicide.
What song was that again?
Love is bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that Bob Dylan or Billy Corgan? I can't really tell.
That should cover
William Patrick Corgan.
Yeah. Should cover each other's songs.
Yeah.
Tangled up in blue.
And then the world is a vampire sent to drain.
Sent to drain.
Anyway.
I don't think they're paying attention, but
yeah. Today is the greatest day.
Love how easily fooled they can be.
Yeah. Some other boob that's going, aim out that.
I've always contested that. I've said this several years ago. You probably remember that. I think one of the things they should do for a zombies thing on Call of Duty, they do the Call of Duty zombies mode, is like a ancient Egypt. Well, it's not in ancient Egypt, but it's like a period of more recent or recent past in Egypt, where it's like you're in a pyramid and you have to survive like waves of mummies coming after you.
Yeah,
like basically zombies, but repackage it in terms of that.
Yeah,
I think it'd be cool. But
oh well. This is an all-time, they're crashing into everything here.
Yeah.
A lot of all-times, like I said.
Shut up and drive.
That'd be perfect to play here. But
that druid-looking guy.
Like resting druid face.
The people on this fighting.
Yeah.
This next shot. Yeah. How's the car even operable?
Mayhem. He's even getting some off.
Well,
Dang. R.I.P. to a legend, coming up. But he goes down swinging.
Yeah.
I respect anyone whose back's against the wall goes out shooting.
Backed up against the wall. As the circle jerks once said. Do what? I'm not sure about this. Yeah.
Yo, you stank.
I have this.
Yeah.
All the bodies were thrown clear.
Well, backs up against the wall yet again. The creature. Not the creature from Harry Potter fame. With a K. Well, he knows ancient Egyptian, by the way. Yeah.
O'Connell's face.
Yeah.
TIA.
I mean, his mere presence, brings back TIA memories from old,
Did it a little early, but there you go.
But Levi's got that saved on his phone, by the way, you know.
Sorry, there were
there
were one or two extra shots in there I forgot. So
yeah,
I was watching. It was on TV here a while back, and I just filmed that because I felt like I'd need it for some reason, and here we are.
Yeah,
and I couldn't even get it on right on the money. But you know, we can't be perfect all the time. You know, come here, you little Emotep boy. Is that all you can say? Ultimate sacrifice. All gave like some gave all.
Martyrdom perk activated.
Yeah. Whenever I used to see that as a perk on Call of Duty, that was the first time I ever saw the word martyr or martyrdom.
Yeah.
But I thought it was saying, because I read it wrong, Marty-dom.
Marty-dom.
Yeah. You got that Marty-dom perk. This gets put on One Perfect Shot a lot, this one. Have you seen that? Yeah.
I mean, are they wrong?
No.
Oh wow, that sounds like fun.
Like suicide by sand, like by quicksand.
Like he's just, I might die. Yeah, let's go vibe. It's all a vibe.
We're already entering the third act here, I guess. Yeah. You know what I like about this movie? It doesn't really have a downtime exactly. Like, the moment of the downtime was when she got captured, but it's already like, okay, we're going to go. It's like very brief, and so many movies have downtimes. So don't do that, you know?
It must be supernatural then.
Yeah.
I
wonder.
Must be a mummy on the loose.
Must be a mummified person.
They're literally like getting carried by those.
He didn't move really at all, by the way.
I needed no job.
The face. It's a pretty good effect.
Mm-hmm. Most of the effects in this movie hold up pretty good. Yeah.
That's why I'm convinced movies like this or Terminator 2, where what you're seeing is so inhuman and supernatural that it doesn't matter if it looks a little fake, because it's like, well, it's not supposed to look real, really. Like, I mean, coming from my girl, like, did a South Park voice for some reason. When he saw he had to make 2 more. Oh my god. When he didn't get his coffee.
Yeah.
But then he did.
Like, nice to see a smile before you might get killed by the.
And it's like nothing about that nothing about that helps, you know. This moment,
but you got the ammo, you gotta waste it. You know? You gotta shoot it.
I always love wasted ammo.
Oh, there's an ammo shortage right now. I don't know if you've heard.
Okay. Who needs it? I mean,
yeah, sickos, I guess. That's just something in a small town, rural America, people love complaining about.
Yeah. That they'd never use, too, really. It's like, okay.
They're all expecting that the apocalypse is going to come tomorrow and it's going to be the Wild West and they're going to need to be killing people in mass. Healthy thought by a lot of people, I know. But
it would have been a definite death and explosion. Okay. Meanwhile, everybody but Winston lived.
Yeah. Just because, why not?
Excuse me. A little help would be useful if it's not too much trouble.
Okay. I'm taking charge.
Yeah. Taking the mounted machine gun off of the plane and gonna, free aim. R.I.P. to Winston.
Is he not the most British looking airman ever, Aviator? Love the way he looked at Jonathan. He almost looked like, can you believe this? Like, or like, I can't believe you that he did it or something. It's like, who's attached to the wing? Like, here's a wing.
R.I.P.
Why do we have this big of a moment for Winston?
I mean, Winston, had a lot of classic moments.
It's like, you remember that moment towards the end of Independence Day Resurgence where that one guy died?
I don't remember much about that movie.
And then Brett Spiner was like, oh, this guy. It's like, who cares about that? No offense, but it's like, why'd that guy get such a big piano exit? Like,
I still trust this trio, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
This trio, though, one's an unwilling, member of it. But.
Well, the other one doesn't really want to be either, but Like, oh wait, really? And like, that's what Rick's been telling him the whole movie.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, really? Like, I don't know. What a British looking man with those clothes.
Yeah.
It's like sleeves rolled up, like.
But he's gonna have his own Scarab experience here. That should be a thing. The Scarab experience, like a minor ride they have. It's like, it's like, oh, we're gonna put like a
bunch of scarabs on you.
Yeah. See how long you can last. No, it's like those machines where the money flies up and people try to catch the money.
Right,
it's like
scarabs.
But scarabs everywhere. You have like 30 seconds to see how what happens to you when you go in. Like, that's a good idea, I think. There's this fairy dust here.
Yeah.
Like,
it can literally come out of the wall,
Yeah.
like his priests.
Now, I love a priest, but I love a priestess.
Oh, yeah. What about a gender-neutral priest?
Yeah, that too. Like the other freaks. Give me the gold. I want the gold.
I was gonna say I want to know where the gold at. They're both thinking the same thing.
You think we know each other?
Yeah.
That's a lot of gold.
Yeah.
It's just like, share some with the rest of them, you know? It's just like, we gotta hoard all that. As bad as income inequality is now, like back then, you know?
Love his line reading here of priests. Imhotep's priests. Like. I don't know why that's funny. All right,
They knew that off the top, you know.
Yeah. Like, all right, then. Oh, but these will go down, you know. They're not part of the admin. You throw the guns.
Yeah.
Like, you can literally reload them all the way, throw them away, but... This is like when you find the inner sanctum on Assassin's Creed Origins, you're just like, oh yeah, like old school. Like,
old school.
A rat. Ugh. Okay.
Like I said, his guy reminds me of George Harrison.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but yeah.
Which I haven't even seen Life of Brian, but have you seen what he looks like in the Life of Brian before? Like,
I think
especially
so,
he's got
yeah.
the long hair, especially looks like that.
Yeah, we're looking at a picture of it now. Who did he play in that?
I don't
technically.
know.
Is that him with Bob Hoskins? Yeah.
Right there,
yeah.
I'm starting to think that reading these books ain't a good idea.
Yeah. Croaking.
How many priests did he have, anyways?
I don't know. No, he was the high priest, so might have been quite a bit. I don't know.
See why they've been killing a lot of these zombified priests, though. But.
Not sure if they had to add CG of the twinkle there. Is that why did you take the time to do that? Like. Well, if they needed another key that wasn't that one, they're like, well...
Well, as if he wasn't already going to do that.
Yeah.
Try to do that.
Priest chanting.
Just the girl next door at this point, you know.
Yeah.
As far as the room next door.
He does have a lot of priests, don't he?
Yeah. I'm saying it's like maybe a bit too much. Like a little much on the priest, Imhotep. Like it's like he was the false idol, you know.
A la Dark Knight Rises, you know. Sounds like saying not too high.
Yeah.
Like, pretty looking lady. Like, ugh.
Or Bride of Frankenstein vibes.
Yeah. Huh?
That's for the 3D re-release. That
Mummies. What a stock moment that was. Mummies, like, yeah.
Got Thing over here helping them out.
Yeah. What if it still would have fell forward and killed him anyway? Babushka, what?
Man, I know some of these characters are experts, but there's a random amount of ancient Egyptian speakers in this movie, you know?
But then they don't really know what they're reading, though, either, because this happens.
I feel like Evie and then the Jonathan Hyde character would be the only ones who probably really would know it. You idiot who knows ancient Egyptian.
Oh, another, yeah. And they're like, okay. Look at this. Wow.
That's a little cruel, don't you think?
Bunch of freaks. This reminds me of like Barbossa marrying what's their names? Will Turner and oh Lord, what's her name?
Keira Knightley's character,
Yeah.
Elizabeth
Swan and at World's End. Of like, there's a fight going on. I was like, oh
yeah. See, Jonathan, he's got the gravy part. You know, you just say all the not in mortal danger compared to the other two. I mean, once they get killed, I will be in mortal danger.
Yeah.
But you know, until then.
That one doesn't have a jaw.
Yeah.
You see, well,
sorry,
once
not
again,
sorry.
Not sorry.
How brutal that
reprise
was.
of motif, like yeah.
Now you die.
So goofy looking.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
The Fraser scream.
Yeah. Or he's turning blue here in a second.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, wow. This one. Like, wow.
Yeah.
like it's a Coldplay song. I was just doing that. You couldn't see
It's
it.
like the
but-
Ghost Army and Return of the King, which we just rewatched.
All it took was his soul.
His mortal soul.
What? Like, no fair. Like, but let's just like pretend that like I didn't die. Like, that's a child's favorite word is pretend.
Yeah. Well, he had a good run, you know. That's our buddy Imhotep, but this wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Or as Gore Vidal once said, rest in hell.
Yeah. About Buckley.
Yeah.
Buckley's death.
But he is dead, though.
Well,
for now.
For now.
This boob.
He literally had a good amount of stuff. He's, gotta get more, gotta get more. Well, here we go.
Well, if that's the one switch that does it all, you know?
The kill switch.
Like the cutout witch. Oh, I got it by Voices song.
A classic Jonathan losing the book of Amun-Ra, you know, like
he barely makes it. Like,
well, here in a second, Rick is willing to try to save him here at the end, you know, for old time's sake.
Goodbye, Beni.
I mean, you're only going to be trapped in there for eternity. I mean,
yeah. Nobody's coming for you. Like, and, well, he doesn't live very long, so. He barely got his hand out of there.
Yeah.
Why can't you make it? Like a rat.
Gotta get away.
He barely made it out of there. This would be like so scary, though. Well. Schuschmer.
R.I.P. Beni.
Yeah.
Piano exit.
Schuschmer. Like,
he had a great run, though, you know?
Yeah.
And we dedicate this podcast in Benny's honor.
Yeah. Wow. So, do you think if Beni would have got out with them, he would have been killed by this?
Yeah,
maybe
probably.
Because he would have been running too slow.
Yeah.
Like... Oh, but all the money gets out, you know. Yeah, that's one of the funny things about the sequel. It actually is a kind of organic thing that they, of course, thought to put in there is how rich they are after the fact because all the gold they got, you know, or whatever. So, it's interesting. But seems like a natural thing to do, but they could have not done that. But wow. Goodbye. So, how'd he get out there?
Yeah, just like whatever, you know.
Yeah, he got out. It's like, how and why? Oh wow! Like, yeah. Oh please, yeah. Like, don't worry, Jonathan. You got all your little money and your little tokens. You can take a
He will indeed
dock.
not be Jonathan Debt. He
Yeah.
will have much money.
He'll have stuff he can take to some tokens he can take back to Hickory Dickory Dock. You know.
Which RIP to that?
Yeah, I've got one of those
institution.
tokens in there.
Oh wow!
right
I gotta
now.
hold on
yeah.
to that.
Yeah. Mama found it here recently, and I was like, "Oh, I gotta keep that." Yeah. The again, like why? Like, saddlebag.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful franchise. You know. Not really. This first one's great, but
no.
Again,
we probably won't be doing those movies on here.
Well, again, I'd like to rewatch the second one
Return.
sometime soon. Just us, maybe
Yeah.
watch it, and I actually would at some point like to see the third one, just because I haven't. You know.
Well, I haven't seen it in so long. I'd like to rewatch it, but well, still really good. So
Yep, still holds up.
Good old fun little movie. Sean Daniel, James Jack, Sean Dan, Jack Daniels, somewhere. Adrian Bedell. BSC must be British.
So The Mummy, still good, still holds up, I think.
Yeah, if there's been anybody who's been coming to some of our podcasts recently of Country Bears, including, you're like, oh, y'all don't like that as much as you should. Like, no, we like this one. Like,
Yeah, we definitely
We don't
do.
give it 5 stars or nothing, but I mean,
But it is good.
Yeah,
Quite good. So you're going to go ahead and pause on that. No disrespect to all the fine people who worked on this. Specifically, Rachel Weisz is who we're stopping on. So we're coming to the end of our 20th episode, and as if you've heard, well, our 10th was Inherent Vice, right? I guess, yeah. Mm-hmm. After every 10 episodes, we've decided we want to do special bonus episodes where we kind of talk about something more of a topic instead of like a specific film. It's a chance to kind of decompress a little bit before we kind of start our next 10 films. And we always want to have that inspired by what the last movie we talked about was. And so our 10th movie, we're actually going to talk about the nature of remakes, which we touched on a little bit today. But we're going to look, I think, about talking about some remakes that we think work, what makes remakes that work, what makes remakes that don't work. And then we're actually going to pitch to one another and to use an audience some remake ideas that we have on our own. Mm-hmm. And we're actually going to try to have each other guess what the other one is. So we're going to try to really sell it on the pitch.
Yeah, to guess what movie it is that's being remade.
Right.
Right.
So we're, I guess that'll mean that we're going to try to really walk the fine line of
not detailing too
much, but giving enough breadcrumbs to say, oh, maybe it's this or maybe it's that.
We'll have to spend some time figuring that out on our own. We're not going to know what they are, so
yeah, we're not telling each other ahead of time what they are. So we're going to pitch you and each other on some remakes that we think could or should happen. You know? So, but after that, we have a big film project on here that we're going to be endeavoring to do. Levi, why don't you go ahead and introduce that?
We're going to do all the Planet of the Apes movies.
All the Planet of the Apes. So the original five, the Tim Burton remake, and then the new trilogy.
Yeah. So that's the 5 movies that were made in the late 60s and the 70s. Like you said, the Burton movie, and then the 3 newest movies that are basically the CG versions of that.
And we have several other ideas for film series we're going to tackle. None that lengthy, I don't think. That's by far going to be the... Well, there's one I can think of that's going to have a lot.
That other one is going to be a lot.
So
it's actually
no, it's not the Andy Hardy movies just yet. No. I've just saw the first one of those, Family Affair, and I'll get around to those. So we're going to be hitting all the Planet of the Apes movies, which I like quite a bit. You love a lot, and are huge on you. What about the Planet of the Apes series to you stands out, and why are we kind of tackling these movies? And just what about the Planet of the Apes movies really made you fall in love with them?
Sequels have been a thing for a long time, and franchises have been a thing for a long time, clearly. But we've talked, you said the Andy Hardy movies, and also had the Thin Man movies.
Those Universal movies.
Right, the Universal movies. And even if you want to go back so far, you had film serials in their own way, and even stuff like Dr. Mabuse, those Fritz Lang films. So obviously there's been versions of such a thing, and there's been stuff like in other countries. There's those Zaitachi, the Blind Swordsman movies.
Right.
There's
James Bond.
The James Bond movies, obviously. So there have been these kind of continuing series. But really, and I think it's pretty safe to say this, that the Planet of the Apes films are the first kind of really major science fiction franchise that wasn't on TV, because you had Star Trek.
Well, that was right at that time, though, even anyway.
But what's interesting, though, about those first 5 films is that they're not made... They were literally made because that one was a big hit and money. But even still, it feels like that's still pretty weird that would get as many sequels as it did. And
it seems like such a specific idea that, frankly, would have maybe only hold up to one movie, that first movie.
Yeah. And I feel like the third movie onward in those has somewhat of a definitive sort of plan for what it's doing. Yeah. But that first sequel, Beneath, we'll talk about it when we get to that. One of the
strangest movies, frankly,
It really is
seen.
one of the weirdest movies. It's basically a Star Trek episode, but Planet of the Apes. And, of course, Planet of the Apes is very much connected to the Twilight Zone, of course, and we'll talk about why that is.
Serling, yeah.
But I don't know. I think that, and then of course the Burton movie, which I haven't seen in probably at least 10 years and don't remember a whole lot about, but am interested to rewatch. Is pretty useless, useless movie.
It's partially shameful, I think, that our first Tim Burton movie we're going to do on this podcast is this movie. But rest assured, we'll be doing other Tim Burton movies in the future, because he's very dear to our hearts. And we'll talk about how that movie is, where that fits into his career at that point.
And then these newest ones, I think, are... I don't even want to use the word revelatory, because they're not... that's the thing about Planet of the Apes that is the best thing about it to me, obviously, is kind of what we're going to mostly talk about when we're talking about these, is that it's a really goofy premise about apes take over the Earth. Spoiler, if you didn't know that, it is Earth.
Planet of the Apes, yeah.
But obviously, especially that first movie, and very much less so as the movies go along, although Conquest, which is really good, the 4th out of those original 5, I feel like it's hitting back on these things pretty heavy. And Escape from the third one, the one before that, kind of too. Very much racial
that fourth
and political
one, though,
statements.
Is very...
no, it is especially.
That's probably, to me, the second best of those movies. It's between 3 and 4 would be 2. But,
because
but that fourth one really has some
bad,
big statements and ideas in it.
Yeah.
And they all do in their own ways. I mean, I think we can go out of our way to say that first one is one of the most important films ever made in a lot of ways, in terms of science fiction film and when it was made and what it has to say, and so we'll delve into that.
Yeah.
But all of them find new ways to grasp whatever the zeitgeist of the moment is.
Yeah.
Even the Tim Burton movie in its own way has.
Yeah, and even those 2 and 5 of those original movies talk about nuclear war and survival and these kind of basic senses of the typical apocalypse stuff. But the new movies though, like I was going to say, I feel like are pretty revelatory in a sense of style and in the sense of prolonging, for lack of a better term, these movies, and that those are, especially Rise, is a lot about genetics and how we treat zoo animals and animals that we experiment on and that sort of thing, especially that first movie, Rise, which is my least favorite of those 3, but I think is still really pretty good, and actually is the like I'm basically saying the most socially conscious of the 3. Actually, it also has James Franco, so that's a knock against it. But yeah, I mean, it's a big question to ask why I love the Planet of the Apes movies, because it's
We're going to be
something
spending a lot
I
of time
don't
talking
really
about that too.
know why exactly, but I think especially that first movie. If you want to ask me what's my favorite thing about Planet of the Apes, it's the first probably half hour of that first movie where they're on the new planet and you don't know what's going on, and particularly the score for that movie, which was done by written and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith, is one of literally the best movie scores of all time. And John Landis has said before, he said, listening to that in the dark, that's some scary stuff. That's a really abrasive, really weird score, film score for that time. And like I said, we'll get into all that then. But I think what works so much about the Planet of the Apes as a whole concept to me, both the original film and everything else that's come out of it, is the sense of the absurd and the profound meets at the exact right moment. And it doesn't always meet. Like, there's a couple movies that aren't as good, but when they meet head on, it's unlike anything else in franchise movie making. I think that it's it really is something that is above stuff like Star Wars and stuff like the Marvel, like these basic franchises, that it's really something far beyond that in a political and social construct.
I agree with all that, and I think too, just the sense of how specific this idea is, and yet it still finds new ways to take on new forms.
And the second best out of all of them was the last one, the most recent one made. Is still like rivals the first movie of how good it is. I think. I mean, the first one is clearly the best, but and it seems like that's going to be it for a little while. But that series just keeps it going. So, well, they are making new ones though. I think that I'd forgotten.
And we might find an opportunity to talk a little bit about the TV series. We haven't watched that though, and just some of the other ancillary media along. One thing for me personally about the Planet of the Apes fandom that I appreciate, and kind of people that I know are into it, Levi being the biggest one, but is that again, if you're kind of going back in terms of the histories of fandoms, you chart that back. Them and Star Trek are kind of the two biggest original fandoms that are still around in their own ways. Now, Star Trek itself is also, similarly to Planet of the Apes, taken on many new forms over the years, and what's, quote, Star Trek, while in some ways is pure and remains what that TOS was, it's changed and new things have come about. Same thing can be said, I think, with the Planet of the Apes movies in its own way, in terms of they evolve with the times, but there's this universal core of ideas in them that make them as part of the zeitgeist now as they've ever been. And I hate using that phraseology, but I think they really speak to the modern world.
And I think that's probably why we're doing it in a way, is that people talk about franchises all the time, but it's like both that we've said, this is kind of people could argue about it all day, but I feel like it's pretty obvious. This is the first major franchise of such, and that it is actually also a franchise that I don't think a lot of people have seen a lot of.
Well, I think that first movie is so iconic, and frankly, the ending is so good. You're like, how can you follow that up?
And then we spend 4 movies spinning wheels. So, but I think it's interesting because a lot of people, I'm certain, have not seen any of those sequels, and and they're very interesting, and that's why we're going to be doing them. So.
Yeah, because for the longest time, I had only ever seen that first one and the Tim Burton one.
Right.
Just because I actually saw that when it came out.
Yeah.
I remember the toys and everything. I kind of remember that. But you had kind of charged ahead and had watched them, and they're actually good. And you need to, and so you kind of do your coaxing. I watched them, and again, they're not all great classics in the same way the first one is, but they still, even that second one, some wildly interesting, thought-provoking ideas in them.
Yeah.
In the midst, like you said, it's the absurd and the profound kind of sitting side by side.
Right.
And sometimes that absurd wins out, but sometimes the profound wins out as well.
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna be exploring.
And I'm excited for that, but also like, how can we talk about Planet of the Apes for 9 episodes? And we're gonna figure out how we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
But
it'll take on.
So
it's on form.
Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up.
But before that,
get
your bananas remakes podcast. Get your bananas and your horses and your weird guns that they have and all that. Yeah, do all that.
And so this is going to take us through September, I believe.
Yeah,
so like the rest of this month, July and August are going to be ape-centric. So.
Yeah, and then another movie after that, which is so random.
There's another animal movie.
Yes, another animal-related movie, but we won't spill the beans on that. So
this is Kyle.
This is Levi.
Take care. God bless.
I'm sorry.